Welcome to the Chill Scientist. Let's begin. Sora is an artificial intelligence model developed by OpenAI that can generate realistic video clips directly from text descriptions. You can type something like, "a golden retriever running through snow in slow motion," and Sora will produce a fully animated, lifelike video that looks as if it were filmed with a professional camera. This isn't video editing or animation software, it's video generation from scratch. Sora creates each frame by analyzing patterns it has learned from countless examples of real-world footage. It doesn't copy existing videos. Instead, it learns the rules of how reality looks and behaves, then uses those rules to invent entirely new visual scenes. This marks a major leap in the world of generative artificial intelligence. Text came first, with systems like ChatGPT. Then came images, through tools like DALL-E and Midjourney. Now we've reached video, which is by far the most complex medium of all. Video combines visuals, motion, lighting, perspective, and physics. Every single frame has to make sense, not just on its own, but in sequence with the frames before and after. Sora's challenge isn't just to make a single good image. It has to make hundreds of good images in a row, each one consistent with the others to form a believable, moving scene. In simple terms, Sora is an AI model that turns written imagination into moving reality. It's not a video editor or a camera. It's a storyteller that uses pixels instead of words. Making video with artificial intelligence is far harder than generating text or still images. When you ask an AI to create a single image, it only has to make one frame look convincing. With video, it must make dozens or even hundreds of frames that all connect logically. Every shadow, reflection, and motion must stay consistent from moment to moment. For example, if you ask for a video of a person walking through the rain, the AI has to understand more than just what rain looks like. It must know how droplets move, how light scatters on wet surfaces, and how a person's hair or clothes react to being soaked. It must also keep the background stable, ensure that the camera movement makes sense, and calculate how water interacts with the environment. Video adds an entirely new layer of difficulty because time itself becomes part of the equation. The AI can't just generate still frames and stitch them together randomly. It needs to simulate continuity, the natural flow of motion that our brains expect. Humans are extremely sensitive to small visual errors. Even a minor inconsistency, like a flicker or an unnatural hand movement, can instantly make a scene feel fake. This is why Sora represents such a major technical milestone. It doesn't just produce frames. It predicts the entire structure of a video, including how things evolve second by second. It understands that if a ball is thrown, it must follow a realistic arc, bounce, and come to rest in a way that follows the laws of physics. In short, Sora's job is to make motion believable, not just visible. It has to simulate reality at 24 frames per second, which means it's essentially generating the illusion of time itself. To make convincing video, Sora has to do something remarkable. It has to understand the world in a way that's not so different from how humans do. It doesn't see reality directly, but it learns its rules through exposure. The model is trained on enormous amounts of video data, each clip teaching it something about how the physical world behaves. For instance, it learns that shadows move when the light source moves, that people's faces change shape when they talk, and that water reflects light differently depending on the angle. This process doesn't give Sora human-style awareness, but it does give it a statistical understanding of cause and effect. When you tell Sora a red balloon floats into the sky, it doesn't actually know what a balloon is in the emotional or tactile sense, but it has seen enough patterns of round red objects rising in bright skies to generate something that looks exactly right. It imitates understanding by modeling probability. Under the hood, Sora uses a type of deep learning called a diffusion model. That's the same core idea behind image generators like DALL-E or stable diffusion, but expanded to handle both space and time. The AI begins with static noise, visual randomness, and then gradually removes that noise step by step, revealing a structured image sequence that matches the description you gave it. What makes Sora special is that it doesn't just predict what each frame should look like. It predicts how each pixel should change over time to stay coherent with everything around it. In practical terms, this means that Sora doesn't just generate what you asked for. It also generates the physics of that request. If you say, a car drifting around a corner on a rainy night, it understands how the tires should slide, how reflections should move across the wet asphalt, and how the headlights should cut through mist. That's not a random guess. It's learned realism, the AI's best reconstruction of how the world behaves based on the patterns it's seen millions of times. Sora doesn't truly understand the world like we do, but it understands how the world looks when it behaves correctly. And for most viewers, that's enough to suspend disbelief. Diffusion models are at the core of how tools like Sora generate video. The concept behind them is both simple and genius. Imagine starting with a completely random image, just static noise, like what you'd see on an old TV with no signal. The AI's job is to gradually remove that noise, one small step at a time, until what's left is a clear, detailed picture that fits the description it was given. In technical terms, the model learns to reverse the process of adding noise to images. During training, it takes real video frames, adds random noise to them over many steps, and then learns how to undo that process. By mastering the reversal, it learns how to go from chaos to order, from pure randomness to meaningful imagery. When this idea is extended to video, the challenge multiplies. Instead of just one static image, Sora must denoise a sequence of images that evolve smoothly over time. It has to make sure that every frame flows naturally into the next. If a person raises their arm in one frame, it can't suddenly drop or vanish in the next. That's where diffusion becomes incredibly powerful. It doesn't just restore images, it restores continuity. This approach also has a hidden advantage. Because diffusion models work step by step, they allow for fine-grained control over style, detail, and composition. Each generation pass adds subtle refinements, like lighting adjustments or motion stability. That's why the final output from Sora often feels organic and cinematic, rather than robotic. Diffusion models are slow compared to some other AI methods, but they're also precise. Each frame is the product of thousands of micro-decisions, all working together to turn noise into something believable. And when scaled to video, that precision gives Sora the ability to make the unreal look natural, 1 pixel and 1 second at a time. For Sora to generate believable videos, it needs to be trained on an enormous amount of visual information. Think of it like this. Before a human filmmaker can tell a story through images, they must first experience the world. Light, motion, people, objects, how rain looks against glass, how fire flickers in wind. Sora learns in a similar way, except instead of memories, it studies patterns in data. The training process involves feeding the AI countless hours of video footage covering nearly every kind of environment and subject imaginable. City streets, oceans, wildlife, crowds, weather, textures, even microscopic footage. The more variety it sees, the better it becomes at generalizing. It starts to learn not just what things look like, but how they behave. It learns that water ripples when disturbed, that faces move in subtle, rhythmic ways when someone talks, and that light has a predictable relationship with surfaces and shadows. However, unlike a human, Sora doesn't understand what it's seeing in a conscious way. It doesn't know what rain feels like or why gravity makes things fall. Instead, it builds statistical relationships between pixels and time. It measures how one visual pattern tends to lead to another. Over billions of examples, these patterns start forming a learned representation of the world. It's not human knowledge. It's something stranger, an approximation of reality built from probability. The challenge for researchers is balancing quantity and quality. Training on too narrow a dataset might make the AI good at only certain scenes. for example, indoor lighting or cityscapes, while failing at others like beaches or mountains. On the other hand, training on too much unfiltered content can create noise, bias, or copyright issues. OpenAI has likely used a combination of licensed material, synthetic data, and possibly some public domain or web-based video content to give Sora the diversity it needs. But scale isn't everything. The true magic lies in how the model organizes what it learns. Through layers of neural networks, Sora compresses all that video knowledge into a latent space, a kind of mathematical map of reality. Inside this space, every concept, object, and motion exists as a point or cluster. When you give Sora a prompt like a surfer riding a massive wave at sunset, it searches through that map to find the patterns that fit best, then reconstructs them as moving images. This is what allows Sora to produce entirely new scenes that look like they could have been filmed in real life. It's not replaying a video it saw before. It's generating something fresh by recombining patterns of color, light, and physics that it has internalized from its training. The result is a simulation of understanding, not real comprehension, but something close enough to create an illusion of intelligence. And as the dataset grows, Sora's internal world, its model of reality, becomes richer, denser, and more accurate. In a sense, it's building its own version of reality, pixel by pixel, based on everything it's ever seen. When you give Sora a text prompt like a child chasing a red kite through a grassy field, something remarkable happens behind the scenes. The system has to take that short phrase, just a handful of words, and translate it into a full cinematic sequence that fits the request. This step, often called the translation layer, is where the magic of text to video truly begins. Sora starts by breaking your prompt into meaningful parts, identifying objects, actions, and relationships. It figures out that child refers to a person, chasing implies motion and direction, red kite is an object that must stay airborne, and grassy field is the setting. But that's only the first step. The AI also has to infer things you didn't say explicitly: what time of day it might be, what kind of lighting would make sense, how the child moves, how wind affects the kite, and how the camera should follow the action. This process relies on what's known as multimodal understanding, the ability to connect language with visuals and physics. Sora uses a large language model similar to ChatGPT to interpret your request semantically, then passes that understanding to the video generator, which converts the idea into visual structure. The AI builds an invisible blueprint, where the objects go, what moves, what stays still, how lighting behaves, and even what kind of camera style fits best. Once this conceptual map is built, Sora uses diffusion to fill it in, frame by frame. Each frame is refined based on the previous one, ensuring consistency in color, movement, and composition. The end result is a seamless translation of words into motion, a process that feels like conjuring imagination into existence. The translation layer is what bridges creativity and computation. It's where what you meant becomes what you see. The better this layer understands nuance, the more control the creator has. This is why even small wording changes can produce dramatically different outcomes. For instance, a child chasing a kite might look playful and bright, while a child struggling to catch a kite in strong wind might become more dramatic with tension and motion. In essence, prompting isn't just about telling Sora what to make. It's about telling it how to think. The translation layer converts language into structured meaning, giving the AI enough context to invent visuals that feel intentional rather than random. As that layer improves, the gap between imagination and execution continues to shrink. We're moving closer to a world where describing an idea clearly is all it takes to create it. One of the hardest problems in AI-generated video is temporal consistency, the ability to make sure things stay stable from one frame to the next. Humans are extremely sensitive to changes in continuity. If someone's shirt changes color mid-shot, or if a shadow flickers in a way that doesn't match the light source, It instantly breaks the illusion. Maintaining consistent reality over time is one of the greatest challenges in computer vision and generative modeling. For a human filmmaker, continuity is managed by careful planning and editing. The actor wears the same clothes, the lighting is kept constant, and each take matches the last. For an AI like Sora, there's no physical world to rely on. It has to recreate that consistency from scratch using mathematics. Each frame is generated as a prediction of how every pixel should evolve from the one before it. The AI must remember what existed, what moved, and what stayed still, all while inventing new motion that fits the overall context. To achieve this, Sora uses a mix of spatial temporal modeling and attention mechanisms. Spatial modeling ensures that objects within a single frame make sense in terms of perspective and lighting. Temporal modeling ensures that these same objects persist across frames in a way that feels continuous. The attention system, a core concept in modern AI, lets Sora focus on key details. For example, keeping a character's face consistent or ensuring a car moves in a straight path without jumping around. The biggest problem early video models had was drift. Faces would morph slightly, hands would flicker, or small details like earrings or tattoos would appear and disappear between frames. These weren't random glitches. They were signs that the model couldn't remember its own decisions. Sora overcomes this by predicting not just individual frames, but sequences of motion. It learns the pattern of change over time, like the rhythm of a heartbeat or the sway of trees in the wind. This approach lets Sora create footage that looks stable, fluid, and cinematic. It can hold a camera angle, track motion naturally, and maintain consistent objects over multiple seconds. That's why its videos don't feel like stitched together images. They feel like continuous shots from a film. Temporal consistency is the difference between AI-generated footage that looks like a glitchy experiment and footage that feels alive. Without it, the illusion of realism collapses. With it, Sora crosses the line from novelty to storytelling tool. For video AI to feel convincing, it has to do more than just draw pretty pictures that move. It has to obey the invisible laws of the universe. Gravity, momentum, friction, inertia, and light. These aren't just aesthetic details. They're the foundation of realism. When something moves, our brains instantly evaluate whether that motion follows physics. If it doesn't, we notice immediately, even if we can't explain why. Sora tackles this problem through what researchers call implicit physics modeling. That means it doesn't have a built-in rulebook for how gravity or water should behave. Instead, it learns physics from observation. During training, Sora sees endless examples of how objects interact, how a drop ball accelerates downward, how waves crash, how dust scatters in sunlight, how hair shifts when someone turns their head. Over millions of samples, these behaviors form patterns that the AI internalizes as normal. So when you prompt Sora to generate a skateboarder landing a trick, it doesn't simulate physics equations like a game engine. It simply reproduces what realistic motion looks like. It's pattern-based realism rather than physics-based simulation. But because those patterns are so deeply embedded in the model, the result feels authentic to the human eye. This kind of learned physics isn't perfect. Sometimes Sora breaks the rules. A shadow might fall in the wrong direction, or an object might float too long before settling. But even human filmmakers rely on cinematic physics. Real-world physics doesn't always look right on camera, so directors often bend reality to make it feel correct. AI does something similar. It imitates the physics that people expect, not necessarily the ones that are true. Interestingly, this approach gives Sora creative flexibility. Because it's not bound by literal equations, it can produce surreal but believable results, like zero-gravity dance scenes or liquid light flowing uphill, while still maintaining visual coherence. That makes it not just a replication tool, but a medium for new kinds of physics-driven art. The ultimate goal of systems like Sora is to reach a point where physics feels automatic, where things fall, roll, bend, and break in ways that need no correction. Once that happens, the difference between a filmed event and a generated one becomes almost impossible to spot. And that's the threshold we're approaching, where physics itself becomes part of the illusion, perfectly simulated through patterns, not math. If there's one thing that consistently gives away AI-generated video, it's the human face. Faces are our most recognizable and emotionally loaded visual cue. We notice the smallest inconsistencies, the twitch of an eyebrow, the direction of a gaze, or the rhythm of a smile. When something feels even slightly off, it triggers what's called the uncanny valley effect, that uneasy sense that what you're seeing is almost real, but not quite right. Sora's biggest artistic and technical challenge is mastering the human face, not just how it looks, but how it behaves. That means understanding complex muscle movements, subtle expressions, and the tiny unconscious motions we make when thinking or reacting. It's not enough for an AI to simply generate a smiling woman. It has to know what kind of smile it is: polite, nervous, sarcastic, or joyful. Each has different facial micro-movements, and those micro-movements must unfold smoothly over time. To handle this, Sora's training includes vast amounts of footage of people talking, laughing, reacting, and moving in natural settings. Over time, it learns the visual grammar of expression, how eyes move before a person speaks, how lips tighten when someone is uncertain, or how a genuine smile engages the muscles around the eyes. These aren't abstract rules. They're learned probabilities extracted from countless examples of human behavior. Even with that, it's still one of the hardest parts of video generation. Faces are extremely detailed, and the human eye is unforgiving. If one frame renders slightly differently, if a person's eyes shift in a way that doesn't match their movement, or if their teeth blur for a fraction of a second, the realism collapses. This is why many early AI video models avoided showing faces directly. Sora, however, has made huge strides in temporal and spatial coherence, allowing for smoother, more believable human movement. Emotion adds another layer. Real emotion changes not only facial expressions, but also timing, posture, and breath. When someone sighs, their shoulders drop. When they're angry, their whole body tenses. Capturing that coordination requires deep modeling of how emotion propagates through the body, not just the face. Sora doesn't truly feel emotions, but it has learned what emotion looks like through exposure. That allows it to mimic authenticity in a way earlier systems couldn't. Still, human realism remains the ultimate test. It's the moment when we stop watching a generated scene as a technical demo and start believing it as performance. Until AI can make us forget we're looking at pixels, human emotion will remain its hardest and most defining frontier. Every filmmaker knows that the camera is more than a recording device. It's a perspective, a personality, a storyteller in its own right. In traditional film, the camera defines what the audience sees and how they feel about it, whether it's a shaky, handheld shot that creates tension or a smooth dolly movement that feels cinematic and controlled. But with Sora, there's no real camera. There's only a simulation of one. When you tell Sora to create a drone shot flying over a mountain at sunrise, the system has to imagine what that drone would do, how fast it would move, what angle it would take, and how the light would hit the lens. The camera path is invented, not captured. That's an entirely new kind of filmmaking. One where the camera exists only as math, a digital ghost moving through a world that isn't real. This means the concept of cinematography is being redefined. In traditional production, the camera is constrained by physics, limited lens ranges, fixed positions, weight, lighting, weather, and human error. In Sora's world, none of those constraints exist. The camera can pass through walls, orbit objects, or shift focus mid-air with impossible precision. It can blend crane shots, steady cams, and handheld footage in one seamless motion. What used to require a team of skilled operators, equipment, and rehearsals can now be done with a single prompt. However, this freedom comes with its own risks. Without real-world limits, it's easy for scenes to lose grounding. Too smooth motion or perfect angles can make footage feel sterile or artificial. Ironically, realism often depends on imperfection. That's why filmmakers sometimes add simulated camera shake or subtle lens distortions. Not because they need to, but because the audience expects them. Sora can mimic these effects intentionally, learning from real footage how minor instability can make a shot feel more authentic. Over time, creators will learn to direct AI cameras the way they once directed human operators, describing tone, rhythm, and mood rather than exact coordinates. You won't say, "Move the camera 3 feet to the left." You'll say, "Make it feel like the audience is discovering this moment." And the system will interpret that into motion. The camera of the future doesn't exist in space. It exists in understanding. And Sora's invisible lens has the potential to capture not just what the eye can see, but what the imagination wants to see. In filmmaking, lighting is everything. It sets the mood, defines the scene, and tells the audience how to feel before a single word is spoken. Warm light feels safe. Cold light feels lonely. Shadows add mystery. Even the way dust glows in a sunbeam can turn a simple shot into something emotional. But Sora doesn't have lamps, spotlights, or the sun. It has math and a vast learned understanding of how light behaves in the real world. When you give Sora a prompt like a candle flickering on a wooden table in a dark room, it doesn't light a candle. Instead, it recreates how candlelight would behave if it existed, how it bounces off wood grain, how shadows dance on walls, and how smoke curls through the air. It's all generated from learned patterns. Through training, Sora has seen countless examples of lighting conditions, natural light, studio setups, reflections, sunsets, neon signs, and learned how those conditions interact with materials and movement. The brilliance of Sora's lighting engine is that it doesn't just focus on brightness, it understands atmosphere. It knows that fog softens shadows, that firelight flickers at inconsistent intervals, and that moonlight has a slightly bluish tint when reflected off water. This gives its videos a cinematic depth that earlier AI models struggled to achieve. The atmosphere feels consistent, and the lighting reacts believably to the scene. But there's also a creative opportunity here. Because Sora isn't limited by real-world physics, it can simulate lighting setups that would be impossible on an actual film set. You can have light that bends around corners, rainbows that move dynamically with sound, or glowing particles that cast shadows in surreal ways. It's a playground for visual imagination. Filmmakers often say that good lighting doesn't just show you what's happening, it shows you why it's happening. That principle still applies in synthetic video. The difference is that now the director doesn't have to rig dozens of lights to achieve it. They just need to describe the feeling. A lonely alley at night lit by a single flickering street lamp is enough for Sora to build a complete lighting environment that matches the mood perfectly. This ability to control light through language changes everything. It turns the technical craft of cinematography into a form of storytelling that's accessible to anyone. And as Sora continues to learn, its grasp of atmosphere, the invisible art of tone, will only get stronger. Even though Sora's visuals are astonishing, one thing is missing: sound. Right now, Sora is focused entirely on generating video, the movement, texture, and look of a scene. But in real life, visuals are only half of what makes an experience feel real. The world is noisy. Every action has a sound. The way those sounds interact with visuals changes how we perceive them. A thunderstorm looks dramatic, but it feels real only when you hear the thunder rolling through the air. Sound adds weight, timing, and emotion. If you see a door slam but there's no bang, your brain knows something is off. The absence of sound breaks immersion faster than almost anything else. This is why the next major step for systems like Sora will likely be audio-visual integration. AI that not only sees, but hears. Imagine being able to generate a scene where the sound of footsteps automatically matches the pace and distance of the character walking, or where the echo of a voice changes naturally based on the size of the room. Creating sound that matches AI-generated motion isn't easy. It requires synchronization down to the millisecond and an understanding of how sound behaves in space. Some projects already experiment with this, using models that generate audio to match video frames. But true sound realism demands more than perfect timing. It demands texture. The crunch of gravel, the echo of a cave, the low hum of city traffic. Those details create a sensory map that tells the viewer they're inside a world, not just watching one. Until Sora integrates sound generation, its videos will still feel a little sterile, like dreams without noise. Yet that silence also highlights how far AI has come. 10 years ago, generating even a single coherent image from text was a challenge. Now we can produce entire cinematic sequences. And soon, we'll be able to hear them too. Motion itself, however, already carries part of that sensory experience. Sora's movement feels rhythmic and intentional, like choreography. The way a camera glides, how fabric moves, or how a car turns. These are visual sounds in their own right. You can almost hear the wind in a scene even if it's silent, because the movement looks so convincing. Eventually, the line between video and audio generation will disappear. You'll write a scene and the system will not only show it, but let you hear it. The voices, the echoes, the music. The entire sensory world of film will exist inside language. And at that point, what we call video generation will simply become experience generation. As powerful as Sora is, it still has limits. And understanding those limits is essential if we want to use the technology wisely. The first thing to remember is that Sora doesn't think the way humans do. It doesn't have creativity, emotion, or intent. It generates based on probability, not purpose. When it creates a video of a couple walking through Paris, it's not imagining romance. It's reconstructing the visual patterns that usually appear when people walk through European streets together. This means that Sora's imagination, while vast, is not infinite. It's confined by the data it has seen. If a concept doesn't exist in its training set, say a specific cultural dance, a rare scientific experiment, or a unique architectural style, it will struggle or approximate. Sometimes it improvises in strange ways, producing details that almost make sense, but don't quite fit. The results can look impressive at a glance, but fall apart under close inspection. Another major limitation is causal reasoning. Sora can model what something looks like, but not necessarily why it happens. For example, it can show a glass shattering on the floor, but it doesn't understand that gravity caused it to fall, or that a person might react by stepping back. It mimics cause and effect through pattern recognition, not understanding. That's why you'll sometimes see small logic errors in AI videos, things like people walking through objects, or water behaving strangely. Then there's contextual continuity. While Sora can generate short, coherent clips, keeping story logic consistent over several minutes remains difficult. If you ask for a long scene, small inconsistencies tend to creep in. Background details might shift, characters might subtly change appearance, or the motion might drift slightly out of rhythm. These aren't just technical bugs, they reveal the absence of memory. Sora doesn't truly remember what it created a few seconds ago. It predicts what should come next based on probability. Finally, there's the issue of intentional storytelling. While AI can simulate the aesthetics of emotion, it doesn't know why a story matters. It doesn't understand tension, irony, or catharsis. It can mimic the rhythm of a dramatic moment, but it can't decide what that moment means. The emotional weight still has to come from human input, from the prompt, the direction, the intention behind the words. These limitations aren't weaknesses as much as boundaries. They remind us that Sora is not a filmmaker. It's a mirror for human imagination. It can amplify our ideas, but it can't replace them. its creativity depends entirely on ours. In a way, that's a good thing, because the day AI truly understands what it's showing us is the day we stop being the storytellers. Every new technology sparks the same fear that machines will replace people. It happened with the printing press, the camera, and the computer. Each time, humans worried that their creative role would disappear. And each time, the opposite happened. The tools changed, but human creativity adapted and grew. The same is happening now with Sora. It's not here to eliminate filmmakers, animators, or visual artists. It's here to change how they work. AI video doesn't remove the need for storytelling. It actually magnifies it. The easier it becomes to create visuals, the more valuable good ideas become. Anyone can generate a scene of a city at sunset, but only a human can turn that scene into a story about loss, hope, or memory. The art isn't in the pixels, it's in the purpose behind them. Sora doesn't know what emotion you want to evoke, or what a moment means in context. That's where humans remain essential. Think of Sora as the ultimate production assistant, one that never sleeps, never complains, and can visualize anything you describe. It can take over the technical labor that once limited creativity. A director can now experiment with camera angles or storyboards instantly, without building elaborate sets or using costly effects. Independent creators can test ideas that would have required Hollywood budgets. Education, advertising, even journalism. All of these fields can use Sora as a creative multiplier. But for all its capabilities, Sora still needs direction. It doesn't know when to stop, where to focus, or what to emphasize. Humans provide structure and taste, the sense of rhythm, tone, and meaning that turns footage into narrative. A human filmmaker understands silence, pacing, subtext, and the emotional arc of a story. Those things can't be generated by math. This new relationship between human and AI will redefine creative roles. Writers might become prompt directors, crafting detailed instructions instead of traditional scripts. Cinematographers might describe lighting setups in words instead of moving physical lights. Editors might shape AI-generated clips rather than cutting raw footage. The tools will evolve, but the heart of storytelling, empathy, intention, and curiosity will remain entirely human. In other words, Sora doesn't take creativity away. It democratizes it. It gives everyone, not just professionals, access to the visual language of film. The question isn't, will AI replace us? It's, what will we create when the hardest part, making things exist, is no longer the obstacle? The future of film won't belong to AI or humans alone. It'll belong to the collaboration between the two. The human imagination will remain the compass, and Sora will simply expand how far it can reach. For most of history, making a film was a luxury reserved for those with access to money, equipment, and people. Cameras, sets, crews, and post-production all cost time and resources. Even short films demanded months of planning and editing. That's what made Hollywood so powerful. It was one of the few places where the machinery of storytelling could actually operate. Now that machinery is being replaced by a single line of text. You don't need a studio, a camera, or even a location. You just need an idea and the words to describe it. With tools like Sora, a teenager in a small town can create a cinematic story that rivals what once took an entire team. A teacher can make educational videos without filming a single shot. A scientist can visualize complex concepts for lectures. A journalist can reconstruct events that were never caught on camera. This is what makes AI video generation so revolutionary. It removes the barrier to entry. Creativity stops being something limited by access and starts being limited only by imagination. The phrase, anyone can be a filmmaker, is finally literal. Of course, this also means we'll see an explosion of content. Not all of it will be good. Much of it will be chaotic, repetitive, or just plain bad. But buried among it will be new voices, fresh perspectives, and creative styles that would never have emerged under the old system. When you remove the gatekeepers, you get diversity. not just in who creates, but in what gets created. At the same time, this democratization brings challenges. If anyone can create hyper-realistic video, then the line between fiction and reality becomes dangerously thin. A powerful idea in the wrong hands can mislead millions. The accessibility that empowers also demands responsibility. Still, the shift is undeniable. Just as smartphones turned everyone into photographers, AI will turn everyone into visual storytellers. The next viral short film, historical recreation, or animated series might not come from a studio at all. It might come from a bedroom, from someone typing, imagining, experimenting. Sora won't make everyone a great filmmaker, but it will give everyone the chance to be one. And that, more than any single video or tool, will reshape culture itself. One of the strangest things about Sora's output is how real it looks. The lighting, the physics, the human expressions, all believable enough to fool the brain. We're entering an era where the border between real and generated is blurring so thoroughly that even trained eyes struggle to tell the difference. That's not science fiction anymore. It's Tuesday on the internet. When you watch a Sora video, you're seeing pure imagination rendered in physical form, a world that doesn't exist, behaving exactly like one that does. That's both amazing and deeply unsettling. It means our traditional way of verifying truth, was it filmed, no longer applies. The camera used to be proof. Now it's just another paintbrush. This merging of reality and imagination will transform not just art, but trust. In the near future, anyone could generate a clip of a historical event, a celebrity's statement, or even a natural disaster, all indistinguishable from actual footage. We've already seen the rise of deepfakes, but Sora takes that realism to a cinematic level. The threat isn't just fake news anymore, it's fake memory. That doesn't mean we should panic, but it does mean we'll need new systems of verification. Just as society learned to adapt to Photoshop with watermarks and digital signatures, we'll need equivalents for AI video. Metadata verification, blockchain watermarks, and AI detection models will all play a part in separating authentic from artificial. The irony, of course, is that we'll need AI to detect the lies created by AI. But let's not overlook the creative upside. For artists and educators, merging reality and imagination opens extraordinary possibilities. A filmmaker can now recreate historical moments lost to time, bringing them vividly to life. A scientist can visualize impossible phenomena, from black holes to atomic motion, in a way that feels tangible. A therapist could help patients process trauma by safely reimagining scenarios in controlled, fictionalized environments. We're entering a time when imagination will have physical presence. What you dream, you can watch. What you describe, you can experience. That power can enlighten or deceive, and which one it becomes will depend entirely on how we use it. The merging of real and unreal is not inherently good or bad. It's simply inevitable. The challenge now is to stay grounded in truth while we explore worlds that never existed. And to remember that just because something looks real doesn't mean it is. When video becomes this easy to fake, ethics stop being theoretical. They become urgent. A technology like Sora doesn't just create art, it creates belief, and belief can be weaponized. Imagine generating a fake video of a world leader declaring war, or a scientist admitting a discovery was false. It doesn't matter if the clip gets debunked later. The damage is done in the seconds it takes to share it. That's the core problem of synthetic reality. Speed beats truth. The internet rewards what spreads fastest, not what's accurate. And in a world where visual evidence used to be the ultimate proof, realistic AI video upends our instincts. If seeing is no longer believing, how do we trust anything? Ethical responsibility starts with creators. Using AI to illustrate a concept or tell a story is one thing. Using it to deceive, manipulate, or impersonate is another. There's a moral difference between fiction that admits it's fiction and fiction that hides as fact. The moment Sora footage is presented as something that actually happened, you cross into the territory of misinformation, or worse, digital forgery. Platforms and governments will eventually step in with policies, verification systems, and maybe even legal consequences. But the real line has to be drawn by users. Just because you can generate something doesn't mean you should. Power without restraint always breaks things faster than it builds them. At the same time, ethical use isn't just about avoiding harm, it's about encouraging good. Sora could be used to educate, preserve culture, visualize science, and make art accessible to people who never had the tools before. It can simulate worlds that teach empathy and understanding. It's not the technology that decides whether it's used ethically, it's the intent of the person using it. We'll need new cultural norms to handle this. Just as society learned to question photos, we'll need to question videos too. Asking, who made this? Or, why was this created? Will become as natural as checking the date on a news story. In a sense, we're about to develop visual literacy for a post-truth world. Synthetic reality doesn't mean the end of truth. It means truth will need better defense mechanisms. And it means ethics, once an afterthought in tech, will have to move to the center of the conversation. Every AI model, no matter how advanced, is built on the shoulders of human creators. The writers, photographers, filmmakers, and designers whose work fills the internet. Sora is no different. Its visual understanding comes from millions, maybe billions of samples. Frames from videos, still images, captions, and written descriptions. But here's the uncomfortable question. Who owns that work? And did they ever agree to be part of this system? AI doesn't copy art directly. It learns patterns from massive data sets, like how light falls on a face or how a bird flaps its wings. But those patterns come from somewhere, and that somewhere is the creative work of people all over the world. When you train an AI model on public content, you're effectively using the collective knowledge of humanity, and sometimes it's copyrighted material, to teach a machine how to imitate human expression. That raises serious ethical and legal issues. Many artists and studios argue that their work has been scraped without consent, turning their creations into unpaid training material. In traditional industries, if your work is used to train someone else, you get credit or compensation. In the AI era, the line between inspiration and exploitation has blurred. Some companies are now trying to address this. They're negotiating with rights holders, licensing data sets, or allowing creators to opt out of future training. Others argue that because the internet is public, everything online is fair game for machine learning. But public isn't the same as free to exploit. A museum is public too. That doesn't mean you can take the art home. The issue isn't just legal, it's philosophical. Creativity has always been a conversation. Artists build on what came before. But Sora and similar systems absorb everything, remix it instantly, and never give back. It's a one-way street. That imbalance will shape how society defines ownership in the age of generative media. One solution might be data transparency, models that clearly show what sources they learned from. Another might be universal attribution, where artists can see if their work contributed to a model and get compensated. Some advocate for AI training nutrition labels, summaries of what went into a model so users understand its origins. Without clear answers, the debate will only grow louder. Because when the world's creative output becomes raw material for machines, the real question becomes, how do you protect the people who made the world interesting in the first place? Every AI system reflects the data it was trained on, including its biases, blind spots, and cultural assumptions. Sora isn't magically objective. It inherits the world view of its training material. If most of the videos and images in its dataset come from certain regions, cultures, or time periods, then its idea of the world will tilt in that direction. For example, if the majority of training clips show Western architecture, fashion, and behavior, Sora will tend to reproduce those more often, not because it's programmed to prefer them, but because they're statistically overrepresented. When you ask it to generate a wedding, it might default to a Western-style ceremony. Ask for a business meeting, and it might imagine suits. And conference rooms. These defaults aren't malicious, they're mathematical. But they reveal how easily bias seeps into systems that learn from human data. This problem goes far beyond representation. Bias affects how the model interprets physics, emotion, even storytelling structure. If most action clips feature male protagonists, the model may subtly associate motion, strength, and leadership with masculinity. If most emotional moments in the data show women crying, it may over-associate femininity with sadness or vulnerability. These patterns might sound small, but when scaled up across millions of outputs, they shape perception in powerful ways. Bias also hides in subtler forms, like geography and lighting. If most beautiful photos in the dataset are taken in daylight or certain color tones, the model starts associating beauty with those specific aesthetics. That's how cultural taste becomes algorithmic standard. It's not that Sora is choosing, it's reflecting what humans already choose most often. Fixing this isn't simple. You can't just tell the AI to be fair. Fairness requires balanced data, and balanced data requires human judgment. Deciding whose vision of the world gets included and in what proportion. That's a messy, ongoing debate that blends ethics, sociology, and computer science. One promising direction is dataset curation with intention, deliberately including underrepresented styles, cultures, and contexts. Another is user control, letting people customize the world view of the model they use. Imagine being able to adjust a cultural balance slider or specify which visual traditions you want emphasized. Because ultimately, AI doesn't create bias, it scales it. And unless we consciously design these systems to see more of the world, they'll keep reproducing the narrow parts they already know. The truth is, training data shapes everything. If AI is a lens, then the data set is the glass. And like any lens, what you see depends on how clean or distorted that glass really is. Behind Sora's smooth, lifelike videos lies an invisible giant, computation. The sheer amount of processing power required to train and run a model like Sora is staggering. We tend to imagine AI as something abstract, floating in the cloud, but the cloud is just a polite way of saying a building full of machines burning electricity. Let's put that in perspective. Training a large video model means processing millions of clips, each with dozens of frames per second, each frame containing millions of pixels. Every one of those pixels becomes a piece of data the model must analyze, compress, and learn from. Multiply that by months of training and thousands of GPUs, high-end graphics processors, running non-stop, and you start to understand the scale. We're talking about megawatts of power and millions of dollars in hardware. Data centers built specifically for these models consume enough electricity to power small towns, and that's just training. Running the model, AI, generating the videos, also requires significant resources, especially if multiple users are creating long clips simultaneously. This isn't just a financial or technical issue, it's an environmental one. AI models like Sora sit at the intersection of innovation and sustainability. The energy consumption behind every simple generation is part of a larger ecological footprint. Some companies are now investing in renewable energy data centers or building efficiency-focused hardware to offset the cost. But the demand continues to grow faster than the solutions. The scale also affects accessibility. The power required to train a system like Sora means only a few organizations, typically the largest tech companies, can afford to build one. That concentration of capability creates a kind of creative monopoly. Sure, AI video will eventually be available to the public, but the underlying model will remain controlled by whoever owns the infrastructure. In short, it's democratizing creativity while centralizing power. To put it bluntly, Sora isn't magic. It's math at an industrial scale. When you type a prompt and see a video appear, you're effectively renting time on one of the most powerful computers in the world. Every second of footage represents billions of calculations happening in parallel, synchronized across machines, scattered across continents. This is the hidden cost of generative video. The bigger the dream, the bigger the energy bill. So as we marvel at what Sora can create, it's worth remembering the unseen reality behind the scenes. A world of humming servers, whirring fans, and glowing chips, all working together to turn imagination into motion. When people talk about Sora, they imagine futuristic algorithms and neural networks, the intelligent part. But the real backbone of AI video generation is physical. It lives in massive data centers, warehouses full of servers, power lines, and cooling systems that keep the entire system from melting down. The magic of Sora happens in a place that looks more like a science fiction factory than a movie studio. These centers are where the real work happens. Each server inside is basically a high-performance computer, often powered by GPUs or specialized AI chips designed to handle millions of simultaneous mathematical operations. When you type a text prompt like a dog chasing a butterfly through a field, that request gets sent through a network of these machines. They split the job into smaller chunks, process them in parallel, then reassemble the output into a seamless video. It's easy to think of AI as something virtual, but it's built on metal, silicon, and electricity. The cables are real. The heat is real. The maintenance teams who walk between the server racks are real. And the logistics behind distributing this computational power to millions of users worldwide, that's an engineering feat all its own. To keep up with global demand, companies distribute these data centers strategically across continents. Some are located near hydroelectric dams or geothermal plants for cleaner energy. Others are positioned in cooler climates to reduce the need for air conditioning. Even milliseconds of delay matter. When a user generates a video, the request must travel to the nearest center and back, faster than the blink of an eye, for the experience to feel instant. Then comes distribution. Once a video is generated, it has to be stored, cached, and streamed efficiently. That's another layer of infrastructure entirely. Content delivery networks, CDNs. These are specialized systems that replicate and deliver content around the world, ensuring that when someone in Tokyo requests the same video as someone in Toronto, they both get it instantly and smoothly. It's a global choreography of machines, the quiet backbone of digital creativity. Every AI-generated frame depends on thousands of coordinated servers doing their job perfectly. So, while Sora might feel like a purely digital mind, it's actually more like a massive ecosystem. Hardware, software, and energy all woven together to make imagination look effortless. The illusion of simplicity hides one of the most complex technological networks humanity has ever built. Right now, generating a Sora video takes time, anywhere from a few seconds to several minutes, depending on complexity. But the real race isn't just about quality anymore. It's about speed. The goal is real-time generation. Typing or speaking a prompt and watching the video appear instantly, like a live hallucination made of pixels. Latency, the delay between request and result, is the biggest bottleneck in AI video. Every frame Sora produces must go through dozens of computational steps, interpreting text, generating motion, rendering detail, applying lighting, smoothing transitions, and blending artifacts. Each of those steps takes processing time, and when you're producing 24 or 30 frames per second, even tiny inefficiencies add up fast. The dream of real-time AI video is massive. Imagine video calls where your background becomes a realistic forest, or live streams where your face instantly transforms into a character, or games where the environment changes as you describe it. That's the future engineers are chasing, and it's closer than most people realize. To get there, researchers are focusing on optimization at every level. On the hardware side, new chips are being designed specifically for AI inference, the stage where the model generates outputs, not just learns. These chips handle parallel computation far more efficiently, reducing energy and time per frame. On the software side, developers are compressing and pruning models, removing redundant parts without sacrificing visual quality. Then there's streaming generation, where the system produces video as it's being created. Instead of waiting for an entire clip to finish rendering, you'd start seeing the first seconds while the rest continues to generate in the background. It's the same principle as watching Netflix while the rest of the movie buffers. Only here, the movie didn't exist a second ago. Speed isn't just a convenience. It changes how people interact with AI. When response time drops below 1 second, creativity becomes conversational. You're no longer prompting a machine, you're collaborating with it. That's what real-time Sora would mean, the ability to co-direct reality itself moment by moment. Of course, real-time generation comes with trade-offs. Faster systems often sacrifice detail, and high-resolution realism requires massive bandwidth. But progress is relentless, and what takes minutes today could take milliseconds tomorrow. Once latency is solved, AI video won't just be a tool for creation. It'll become a medium for interaction. You won't make videos. You'll perform them, live alongside the machine. For over a century, making video has been expensive. Cameras, sets, lighting, actors, editors, and visual effects all cost money, lots of it. Every second of film carried a price tag. That's why studios cared about every frame. It was literally an investment of time, labor, and capital. But what happens when that cost drops to almost zero? What happens when you can make a movie for free, just by describing it? Sora and models like it are about to collapse the economics of imagination. In the traditional system, production cost acted as a filter. You had to believe strongly enough in your idea to justify spending resources on it. Now that filter is gone. The question is no longer, can I afford to make this? It's, do I feel like making this right now? That shift has huge consequences, both exciting and chaotic. On the bright side, creativity becomes limitless. Small creators, teachers, scientists, and hobbyists can make professional quality videos without financial barriers. Experimentation explodes because failure is cheap. You can try 10 bad ideas before breakfast and stumble upon something brilliant by lunch. But there's also a darker side: oversaturation. When everyone can make anything instantly, attention becomes the new currency. The competition isn't for funding, it's for eyeballs. We've already seen this with social media, where abundance turns into noise. Soon, the same will happen with video. A single person could flood the internet with hundreds of realistic clips per day. The challenge won't be creation, it'll be curation. This economic shift will also disrupt entire industries. Advertising, film, gaming, education, all will have to adapt to a world where content is infinite and authenticity is uncertain. Why hire a film crew when you can generate a scene in 10 seconds? Why pay for stock footage when you can just describe exactly what you want? Even creative agencies will face competition from individuals using AI tools at home. The irony is that as production costs vanish, human taste becomes more valuable. People will pay not for the video itself, but for who made it, for the voice, the style, the perspective behind the pixels. Curation, editing, and storytelling will become premium skills again. The artist won't be the one who generates the image, but the one who gives it meaning. So yes, Sora will make creation free, but meaning will still have a price. If you've ever worked in video production, you know the quiet hero of the industry. Stock footage. Need a clip of clouds drifting over mountains? A handshake in an office? A drone shot of downtown Tokyo? Stock libraries have been the safety net of every content creator for decades. But Sora may be about to make that entire system obsolete. Stock footage exists because filming everything yourself is expensive and time-consuming. You rely on pre-shot material, little slices of the world captured and categorized for reuse. But with Sora, you don't have to search for a clip that almost fits what you need. You can generate the exact shot you imagined in the exact lighting with the exact mood instantly. No licenses, no downloads, no waiting. That's the death sentence for traditional stock libraries. Why pay $200 for a 5-second clip of a man walking through fog when you can just describe a middle-aged man in a trench coat walking through neon-lit fog at night with slow camera movement and get it on demand? The middle layer between imagination and execution disappears. But while stock footage dies, something new is being born: synthetic media. This term refers to any audio, video, or image created entirely by AI. Unlike traditional media, it has no physical origin, no camera, no microphone, no actors. It's pure data shaped into perception. Synthetic media isn't just a tool for replacement, it's a new form of expression. We're already seeing its early forms: AI-generated commercials, product demos, explainer videos, and even movie trailers that exist only in concept form. As quality improves, brands and studios will rely on these tools for speed and control. Need a beach scene but don't want to fly a crew to Hawaii? Generate it. Need to visualize a futuristic city? Generate it. Need a celebrity endorsement but can't afford the actual celebrity? Generate a look-alike, ethically, with permission, or even a fictional spokesperson. The real power of synthetic media isn't just realism, though. It's flexibility. You can edit anything, change the weather, move the camera, alter the actors. After generation, the creative process becomes fluid. Scenes are no longer fixed. They're adjustable realities. There's also an emerging ecosystem around it: synthetic actors, synthetic environments, synthetic soundtracks. Each of these will form its own market. A company might hire a digital model for an ad campaign or license an AI-generated background that nobody ever filmed. So while stock footage fades, a new kind of content economy is rising, one where creativity is infinite and reality is optional. Actors have always been the emotional core of storytelling. Their faces, voices, and movements bring scripts to life. But Sora and other generative systems are introducing a new kind of performer, one that doesn't eat, sleep, or age: the digital actor. Digital actors aren't new in concept. Hollywood has used computer-generated doubles for decades, from de-aged versions of famous stars to entirely fictional characters like Gollum or Thanos. What's changing now is accessibility. You no longer need a studio full of motion capture rigs and animators to make a realistic performance. You just need a few lines of description. Imagine typing: a young woman with red hair and a calm expression sitting in a coffee shop, speaking softly about her childhood. Sora can generate that scene from scratch: the person, the setting, the emotion, all at once. The actor doesn't exist, but she feels real enough that the viewer wouldn't question it. That's both powerful and unsettling. For the entertainment industry, this opens up new possibilities. You could cast a digital actor designed exactly for your story. They never forget lines, never need lighting adjustments, and can play any role, from a medieval knight to an alien explorer. They can even exist in multiple projects simultaneously. In other words, you can hire a synthetic performer who never takes a break. But the ethical complications are huge. What happens when studios start cloning real actors' likenesses? Even if done with consent, who owns that digital identity? The actor, the studio, or the algorithm that renders it? We've already seen disputes over voice cloning and image rights, and AI video will multiply those debates exponentially. Some performers are already embracing this future. Actors are licensing their digital doubles for use in ads or virtual productions, allowing them to earn income without being physically present. It's convenient, but it also raises uncomfortable questions. What happens if your digital twin starts outperforming you? Or worse, appears in content you didn't approve of because a third party misused your model? On the creative side, digital actors could empower independent filmmakers who can't afford big names or large casts. You could make a feature-length film with characters entirely invented in text, each with unique mannerisms, speech patterns, and visual details. AI voice models could even match the tone and rhythm of real human delivery, closing the gap between fiction and performance. In the end, digital actors won't replace humans entirely, but they'll expand what performance means. We'll have real actors, virtual actors, and hybrid ones all coexisting. The screen won't distinguish between them, but the audience might not care either way, as long as the emotion feels real. If digital actors are to feel truly alive, they need more than movement and dialogue. They need memory. Real people carry emotional weight from moment to moment. A facial expression in one scene makes sense because of everything that came before it. Without continuity, even the most realistic AI-generated character feels hollow, like a puppet reacting instead of living. Right now, Sora doesn't remember what it's already shown you. Each frame is a fresh calculation, unaware of what came before. That's fine for short clips, but storytelling requires consistency. If a character gets injured in one scene, that scar needs to remain later, if they're sad. Their voice and posture should carry that emotion until something changes it. Humans do this automatically. AI does not. To give characters continuity, engineers are exploring ways to add persistent narrative memory to generative models. This means the AI tracks details about each character, their appearance, mood, motivations, and history across scenes. The model doesn't just render pixels, it maintains an internal map of who the character is. This kind of system already exists in early forms in AI chatbots and story simulators, where the model remembers previous interactions to maintain personality. But applying that to video is a much larger challenge. The AI needs to keep visual, emotional, and behavioral consistency across thousands of frames, while still allowing improvisation. It's like trying to give a robot actor a sense of backstory and emotional logic. If done right, it would revolutionize storytelling. You could create a fully digital cast that not only looks real, but behaves real. Characters who remember, evolve, and react with internal logic. They could form relationships with each other, grow over time, and respond to new prompts in ways consistent with their past. This opens up fascinating creative possibilities. You could build a continuous world where AI characters live on between projects, where their personalities persist even when you start a new film. A character introduced in one short could appear years later, older, wiser, carrying experiences from everything that's happened in their virtual life. But there's also a philosophical risk. When we give machines memory, we start to blur the line between simulation and identity. If an AI character remembers, reflects, and learns, even just within its fictional world, is it still just a tool or something more? Giving AI memory won't make it human, but it will make it more believable. And in storytelling, belief is everything. Emotion is the final frontier of realism. You can generate perfect lighting, accurate physics, and flawless skin textures. But if the face doesn't feel alive, the illusion collapses instantly. Humans are experts at reading emotion. We notice the tiny twitch of an eyebrow, the hesitation in a voice, the subtle delay before a tear falls. That's why emotion is so hard for AI to fake, and why it's so crucial for tools like Sora to get right. Right now, Sora is excellent at displaying emotion, but not at understanding it. It can make a character look sad because the dataset shows what sadness looks like. Downcast eyes, slower motion, softer lighting. But it doesn't know why the character is sad. There's no cause, no context, only mimicry. To achieve convincing emotional realism, AI models need a deeper kind of mapping. Instead of just replicating the visual cues of emotion, they must connect those cues to events, dialogue, and internal states. For example, if a character hears bad news, their reaction shouldn't be random. It should reflect what's happened before, what they care about, and how they usually respond. This requires an emotional model layered on top of the visual one, a kind of synthetic psychology. Developers are experimenting with multimodal systems that combine text, video, and emotional metadata. These models don't just see a sad face, they understand that sadness emerges from disappointment, loss, or empathy. With enough context, the AI can start to predict emotional progression, when tension builds, when relief comes, and how those shifts should look and sound. When that happens, AI-generated performances could finally pass what filmmakers call the uncanny test, the moment the audience stops noticing it's artificial. A small shift in tone, a perfectly timed exhale, a glance that lasts one frame longer than expected. These are the human details that carry entire scenes. Of course, there's a moral question in teaching machines to imitate feelings they don't possess. A synthetic smile might move you even though no one actually feels it. That's unsettling, but it also mirrors what actors have done for centuries: perform emotion to evoke emotion. The difference is that AI does it without consciousness, without ever truly feeling. Still, from the audience's perspective, what matters isn't whether the emotion is real, it's whether it feels real. Once Sora can consistently generate that level of performance, it won't just mimic life. It'll capture the rhythm of the human heart, frame by frame. For over 100 years, film has been about storytelling, capturing a sequence of moments chosen by the creator and presented to the audience. You sit down, you watch, and when it ends, the story is over. But with AI tools like Sora, that relationship is starting to change. We're moving from storytelling to simulation, from fixed narratives to living worlds that can change based on what you ask, or even how you feel. Think about it this way. Traditional film is a window. You look through it at something someone else made. Simulation, on the other hand, is a door. You can step inside. Instead of being a passive viewer, you become part of the story. You could change the weather in a scene, alter a character's dialogue, or explore parts of the world the director never showed. The line between watching and creating disappears. This shift is already visible in gaming, but Sora takes it further. Games rely on pre-built assets and rules. Sora can generate both on demand. Imagine watching a movie and saying, "Show me what would happen if the villain made a different choice," and instantly seeing an alternate version play out. Or asking, "What if this story took place in Venice instead of New York?" and watching the entire setting change dynamically. This is storytelling with no boundaries, narrative as a system, not a script. Filmmakers become architects of possibilities instead of authors of one path. The story becomes a sandbox, and the audience becomes a collaborator. It's also a philosophical shift. In traditional cinema, meaning comes from what the director chooses to show and what they choose to withhold. In simulation-based storytelling, meaning might come from exploration. You don't just observe emotion or consequence, you experiment with it. The viewer becomes both scientist and participant, exploring the emotional physics of human behavior through generated experience. Of course, this also raises big questions about authorship. If every viewer gets a slightly different version of a story, who's the real creator? The one who wrote the prompt? The AI that filled in the details? Or the user who made the decisions along the way? Sora could make this kind of adaptive storytelling normal. Movies won't just be watched, they'll be lived. Each experience will be unique, personalized, and interactive. It's a natural next step after centuries of storytelling evolution. From oral tradition to books to film to worlds you can literally enter. We're no longer just making stories about life, we're building alternate versions of life itself. At some point, the discussion about Sora stops being technical and becomes philosophical. If AI-generated video becomes indistinguishable from reality, not just in appearance, but in sound, movement, and emotional resonance, what happens to our sense of what's real? Humans are hardwired to trust our senses. When we see something vivid and consistent, our brain accepts it as truth. That's a survival instinct. We evolved to believe our eyes. But Sora and similar technologies weaponize that instinct in a strange way. They can show us things that look perfectly real, even when they never happened. That changes the nature of trust, memory, and even experience itself. Imagine watching a video of your hometown. Same streets, same people, same details, but none of it exists. The buildings were never built. The people were never born. Yet your brain recognizes it as familiar. That's not just uncanny, it's existentially confusing. The difference between seeing and believing collapses. We've seen this pattern before. Photography blurred the line between representation and reality. Film blurred it even further by adding movement. But AI-generated simulation takes it to the next level. It removes the original reference altogether. There is no camera, no actor, no moment. The footage is pure invention, reality without origin. The question then becomes, if something feels real, does it matter that it isn't? For entertainment, probably not. For news, history, or evidence, absolutely. Our culture will have to rebuild the concept of proof from scratch. Video evidence will stop meaning what it once did. But beyond trust and authenticity lies something deeper: experience. When simulation becomes perfect, it stops being just representation. It becomes an alternate form of existence. You could experience worlds that never were, people who never lived, and memories that never happened, yet still feel something real. Emotion doesn't care if the cause is real or artificial. That's what makes Sora and systems like it so profound. They don't just change how we create, they change how we perceive. We'll have to start defining real, not by what exists physically, but by what affects us emotionally and psychologically. When simulation feels real, the boundary between imagination and existence disappears. What's left is a strange new category: synthetic reality, a mirror of our own consciousness, built from words, pixels, and probability. We've reached the edge of something profound. When anyone can generate a video that looks real, sounds real, and feels real, perception itself becomes a customizable experience. You'll no longer consume the same reality as everyone else. You'll curate your own. Imagine waking up and scrolling through not just social media posts, but entire AI-generated worlds tailored to your interests. One person's morning feed might include a realistic simulation of an alien planet. Another's might show a reenactment of historical events from a new perspective. Each of these experiences will look authentic, but none of them will be real. That's both thrilling and disorienting. The human brain evolved to process a single shared world. Now it will have to adapt to a universe of synthetic ones. Reality, as a concept, will splinter. It won't disappear, but it will become one option among many. Education will change first. Instead of reading about the Roman Empire, students will walk through it, see it rebuilt frame by frame, in perfect detail. Entertainment will shift from passive viewing to active participation. History will stop being static. Art will become infinite. But this abundance comes with psychological weight. When everything is possible, meaning becomes the scarce resource. In a world of infinite video, people will crave not more content, but more connection. Stories that feel personal, authentic, and emotionally grounded. Ironically, the most valuable content in the synthetic age might be the rare things that still carry genuine human fingerprints. Sora is just the beginning. It's not the final tool, but the first step toward a future where imagination and perception merge completely. We'll need to learn how to navigate that world, how to question what we see, how to value what's real, and how to stay human inside a universe that can generate anything. Because in the end, Sora doesn't just create videos. It creates possibilities, reflections of how far human creativity can stretch when the barrier between thought and reality disappears. The technology may belong to machines, but the vision, the impulse to imagine, to dream, to create, will always belong to us. When people first hear the phrase video AI, most imagine a kind of digital filmmaker, an intelligent system that dreams up scenes from scratch, like a director sitting at a supercomputer yelling, "Action!" The truth, though, is a lot less romantic and a lot more fascinating. Models like Sora, Runway Gen 3, Pika, and LTX Studio don't imagine videos the way we do. They don't have eyes, cameras, or emotions. What they have is an enormous understanding of patterns, the structure of how the visual world tends to behave. Let's unpack that in plain English. A video GPT, or more precisely a text-to-video generative model, takes a piece of text, something like, "A dog jumps into a lake at sunset," and transforms it into a coherent, moving image. That's a lot harder than it sounds. It's not enough for the AI to just draw a dog or a lake. It has to create dozens of frames per second with consistent lighting, realistic water physics, natural camera motion, and believable timing. Each of those things is a separate technical mountain. So how does a machine pull that off? The secret lies in a fusion of language modeling and visual generation, built on two core ideas: tokenization and prediction. First, the system needs to understand what you're asking for. When you type a prompt like, "a man walking through a snowy forest," the words don't stay as text. The model converts them into tokens, numerical representations that carry meaning. For instance, the word forest isn't just a word, it's a vector, a list of numbers that encode all the contexts the model has ever learned about forests: trees, light, shadows, mist, movement, maybe even sound. This is exactly what happens inside ChatGPT or GPT-4. When you ask a question in text form, the model converts language into a mathematical thought space. A video GPT works similarly, except it doesn't just stop with words. It uses those word vectors to guide the generation of pixels, motion, and time. In other words, the AI translates your prompt into the concept of a scene, not a picture yet, but the meaning of one. Once the text is encoded, the model starts generating video using one of two main methods: diffusion or transformer-based prediction. Let's start with diffusion. In diffusion models, like the ones used in DALL-E, Midjourney, and the early versions of Runway, the AI begins with pure noise, a chaotic static image, and gradually refines it into something recognizable. It's like sculpting from fog. Each step removes randomness until a clear picture emerges. For video, this process happens across time, not just space. The model must refine not just a single frame, but the smooth evolution of frames that connect logically. That's incredibly demanding. If even one frame drifts too far off course, you get flickering faces, warping limbs, or disappearing objects. To handle that, newer systems like Sora use transformer architectures, which are the same kind of neural networks that power large language models. Transformers excel at one thing: predicting what comes next. In a text model like GPT, that means predicting the next word in a sentence. In a video model, it means predicting the next frame in a sequence. The same principle applies. Context builds continuity. If the model has seen billions of examples of how things move, how a car rolls down a hill, how fabric folds when someone turns, how reflections shift on glass, it learns the patterns that make motion feel real. So when you give it a text description, it doesn't just guess what a frame should look like, it predicts how it should evolve. That's why many researchers say Sora and models like it are world simulators. They don't just draw, they forecast. This is the mind-bending part. When you look at the technical layers of a video model, you find something eerie. It develops an internal sense of physics, not hard-coded, but learned from data. The AI starts to infer that gravity makes things fall, that water ripples, that people don't teleport between positions unless asked to. It's not thinking about physics consciously, it's just identifying the probability of how objects move, interact, and change over time. But the effect is the same. The model forms a kind of common-sense physics engine out of patterns alone. You can see this when Sora outputs clips where the wind subtly moves leaves, or a shadow glides across a floor as the sun shifts. Those details aren't explicitly commanded in the prompt. They emerge naturally, because the model has absorbed the structure of reality through exposure. This is where AI starts to mirror cognition. Humans, too, learn by exposure. A baby doesn't need to read Newton's laws to understand gravity. It just sees enough things fall. Over time, the brain builds expectations of how the world behaves. Sora is doing the same thing, only with millions of terabytes of experience compressed into weights and parameters. The fascinating part about these models is how language controls visuals. When you write camera pan slowly, the AI doesn't just translate that into a word. It creates a physical simulation of a camera moving through virtual space. When you write shot on a vintage film camera, it knows to add grain, muted colors, and frame jitter. Essentially, the model treats language as a programming interface for reality. The text becomes a blueprint for the video's physical and emotional properties. And that's where the GPT label becomes accurate. It's generative pre-trained transformation in a very literal sense, the transformation of meaning into motion. It's worth noting that these systems aren't purely visual generators anymore. They're multimodal, meaning they can process and connect text, image, sound, and movement in the same conceptual space. When OpenAI or Runway talks about multimodality, this is what they mean. The model understands that rain implies sound, motion, light distortion, and mood, not just a visual pattern. In practice, that means when you describe a quiet, rainy evening, the AI might dim the lighting, add fog, slow down motion, and color grade the scene cooler. All emergent behaviors from a single line of text. Now let's talk about size. Because without scale, none of this would work. Training a model like Sora requires astronomical amounts of data and computing power. We're talking about thousands of GPUs running for months, consuming data sets that include everything from cinematic footage to everyday phone videos. This scale is what allows the model to generalize, to take what it's learned from millions of dog videos and generate a completely new dog that moves believably in a brand new scene. Smaller models can't do that because they don't see enough variation to learn cause and effect. Sora's brilliance is that it's big enough to understand context at multiple levels: spatial, temporal, and semantic. It doesn't just know how a scene looks, it knows why it looks that way. It knows that if someone drops a ball, it should bounce, not float. If it's snowing, people's breath should fog up. Those aren't rules it was told, they're relationships it discovered. The ultimate goal isn't just better videos, it's generalized visual intelligence, a system that can not only render realistic footage, but reason about it. Imagine a future Sora that can understand narrative structure, anticipate emotional beats, or even collaborate with a user to build a film scene by scene. That's where this is heading. Video GPTs as creative partners. Not passive tools that obey instructions, but dynamic systems that can brainstorm, visualize, and iterate alongside humans. When that happens, and it's coming sooner than most expect, video generation won't be about typing a sentence and watching a clip appear. It'll be a dialogue between imagination and computation, between human intuition and machine precision. At that point, AI video won't just be a tool, it'll be a language, the next stage in how humans express ideas. When people first hear the phrase video AI, they usually picture something like a robotic filmmaker sitting behind a keyboard, dreaming up movie scenes out of thin air. In reality, the process is far less magical and far more incredible. Systems like OpenAI's Sora, Runway's Gen 3, Pika, and LTX Studio don't imagine videos the way we do. They don't see with eyes, feel with emotion, or understand stories in the human sense. What they do is learn the patterns that shape the visual world, the physics, the textures, the subtle ways things move and change. To understand how they work, you have to think less like an artist and more like a scientist. When you type a sentence like, "A dog jumps into a lake at sunset," you're not giving the AI a picture. You're giving it a set of probabilities. The words get converted into numbers, tokens, each one representing meaning. The word dog, for example, becomes a mathematical description of everything the model has ever seen connected to that idea. Fur, motion, perspective, shadows, size, context, it's all encoded. The word lake triggers patterns of water reflection, ripples, horizon lines. Sunset evokes orange light, longer shadows, and slower movement. Together, those word embeddings form a conceptual seed that tells the system what kind of world to build. The actual video generation starts from pure noise, literally static, like the fuzz on an old television. Then the model begins to predict what should exist there, step by step, refining the randomness until something coherent takes shape. That's called diffusion. At each step, the model removes a little bit of noise and adds a little bit of order, guided by the meaning of the text prompt. It's like sculpting fog, a slow, careful emergence of pattern from chaos. But here's the twist. In modern video systems like Sora, diffusion isn't the only thing happening. Under the hood, they also use transformer architectures, the same kind of networks that power ChatGPT. Transformers are experts at predicting sequences. In a language model, that means predicting the next word. In a video model, it means predicting the next frame. That's what makes video generation so insanely difficult and fascinating. Instead of filling in a single static image, the AI has to predict how that image changes over time. Not just once, but dozens of times per second. It's like running a movie reel through a neural brain that's guessing each frame as it goes. This constant prediction turns the system into something much bigger than an art tool. It becomes a kind of world simulator. The model doesn't just draw objects, it understands relationships between them. If it sees a ball in midair, it predicts that the ball should fall next. If there's wind, it moves the trees. If the light is coming from the left, the shadows shift right. It's not physics in the scientific sense, it's statistical physics, learned from patterns in millions of hours of footage. But it works. This is why Sora's clips look so shockingly real. When you watch one, you're not seeing raw computation. You're seeing probability collapse into realism. The model narrowing down from infinite possible futures to the one that feels most believable. It's not copying reality, it's forecasting it. And yet, even with all that brilliance, video generation has been one of the hardest frontiers in AI for decades. Making a good still image is tough. Making a video that looks real is brutal. The reason is time. Video adds an entire new dimension of complexity. Every frame has to connect to the next. Lighting, perspective, shape, motion, all must remain coherent. The human brain is hypersensitive to inconsistencies in movement. We evolved to notice when something looks off, because in nature, that's how you spot danger. So if an AI-generated hand twitches wrong, or a face subtly melts between frames, we immediately feel it. It doesn't matter how good the individual images look. If the motion doesn't obey physical logic, it breaks the illusion. The first challenge is what engineers call temporal coherence. Imagine generating a person walking across the street. The model has to draw that person's face, body, and clothing dozens of times per second, each time slightly different, but always recognizable. If the lighting flickers or the person's jacket changes color halfway through, it's over. The realism collapses. Early, video AIs failed constantly at this because they treated each frame as an independent image instead of part of a continuous flow. Then comes spatial coherence, understanding three-dimensional space. For years, video models couldn't handle camera movement. The moment the virtual camera panned, the background warped like a dream sequence. That's because most models didn't actually know what depth was. They were generating flat images, not 3D scenes. They couldn't tell that turning left meant revealing the hidden side of an object. Newer systems like Sora solve this by learning 3D structure implicitly. They don't render scenes the way a video game engine does. Instead, they infer geometry statistically. After seeing millions of examples, the model starts to form an internal sense of space. It doesn't know 3D, but it acts like it does. Another nightmare problem was what's called identity drift. Let's say you generate a short film with one character. They look fine at first, but after 5 seconds, their face starts to morph, their clothes subtly change, and their walk becomes erratic. That happens because older models had no long-term memory of what the character looked like. Each new frame was a fresh guess. There was no continuity of identity. The introduction of transformer attention mechanisms solved this by giving the model a kind of short-term memory. It can now look backward through hundreds of frames and remember how things appeared before. That stabilizes identity and lets motion flow naturally. Even when the model architecture worked, another giant problem remained: data. Video data is messy, huge, and full of legal landmines. Unlike text, you can't just scrape billions of videos without running into copyright. So AI labs had to curate their own massive data sets, a combination of licensed clips, synthetic renders, and publicly available material. But it's not just about size, it's about variety. To understand how the world moves, an AI has to see everything, not just people walking, but leaves blowing, cars splashing through puddles, fog rolling across mountains, and reflections bending on water. That level of variety takes astronomical amounts of footage. And then there's the hardware problem. Training a large video model makes the compute requirements for text models look like child's play. A still image is one data point. A single second of video at 24 frames per second is 24 images, each one with motion relationships that must be preserved. A minute of video is over 1,000 images. Multiply that by thousands of training hours, and you start talking about data centers that look like industrial furnaces. Sora didn't appear because someone had a clever algorithm. It appeared because someone finally had enough hardware and money to make it happen. For years, this computational barrier kept video AI in the realm of toy experiments. It wasn't that researchers didn't know how to build it. They just couldn't afford to run it. Only recently did transformer efficiency, diffusion optimization, and specialized GPU clusters make it feasible. Once those pieces aligned, efficient architectures, clever temporal encoding, and massive scale, the quality jumped overnight. That's why Sora feels like such a leap forward. It's not that we suddenly discovered how to make video. It's that we finally had the horsepower to make it work at scale. And here's the beautiful irony. After all these years, video AI works because it learned to stop faking video and start predicting reality. Instead of drawing frame after frame independently, modern systems treat video as a living, continuous process, a physical simulation governed by cause and effect. If someone throws a ball, gravity pulls it down. If a car turns left, the background slides right. These behaviors aren't programmed in. They emerge from the data, from billions of hours of the model watching how the real world behaves. The model doesn't consciously know physics, but it learns the rhythm of the universe just by watching it long enough. That's why Sora's clips don't just look real, they feel real. You can see the weight of movement, the soft interplay of light and shadow, the small imperfections that make reality convincing. It's not magic, it's prediction, refined to the point of illusion. The AI has absorbed enough patterns of how the world changes to simulate it with near-perfect fidelity. But even with all that progress, we're still in the early stages. The next frontier isn't just generating believable footage, it's interactive generation. Systems that can respond in real time, adjust the scene as you speak, and collaborate creatively with you. Imagine telling an AI, move the camera closer, and watching it shift smoothly as if you were directing a real film crew. Or asking, make it feel more emotional, and seeing it subtly alter lighting, pacing, and facial expressions. That's where this is headed. In the end, what makes Sora and its peers remarkable isn't just their technical power, it's that they've turned video, the most data-heavy, visually complex medium humans have ever created, into a form of language. You type words, and the machine translates them into motion. You describe a world, and it simulates one. The line between imagination and reality blurs a little more, and for better or worse, that's the future. Not a camera that captures the world as it is, but a model that builds the world as you describe it. If you've been following along so far, you already know that Sora doesn't just generate pretty videos, it predicts reality. But what exactly does that mean under the hood? How does a machine turn a simple text prompt like, "a train crossing a bridge in the rain," into 60 seconds of convincing, moving, three-dimensional footage? The short answer is, by simulating the world, one token at a time. Sora looks like a video generator on the surface, but its architecture reveals something deeper. It's a world model, a system that learns the logic of reality itself. In other words, it's not just rendering motion, it's inferring cause and effect. It doesn't merely draw a train, it understands that trains move along tracks, that bridges curve slightly under weight, that rain darkens surfaces, and that reflections change as droplets hit the ground. That might sound like magic, but it's the result of a very specific kind of architecture. Sora, like other advanced video models, combines three major technologies: diffusion, transformers, and latent space modeling. Together, these components form a hierarchy, from raw randomness to meaningful visual structure. It all begins with noise. Sora starts every video from static, random pixels with no meaning at all. The model's job is to gradually remove that noise and replace it with order. But unlike earlier systems that worked on one frame at a time, Sora works on blocks of space-time, three-dimensional cubes that include both spatial data, the image, and temporal data, the motion. Think of each cube as a chunk of the video, like a few frames grouped together. The model refines these chunks in parallel, predicting how each one should evolve to maintain global coherence. The key word there is predict. This is where the transformer part comes in. Transformers are the same family of models that power ChatGPT and other large language systems. They excel at one fundamental task: predicting what comes next in a sequence, based on everything that came before. In a language model, that means predicting the next word. In a video model, it means predicting the next frame, or more precisely, the next pattern of pixels and motion. So Sora treats video the same way ChatGPT treats text. Each frame becomes a token, not of language, but of vision. The model learns statistical relationships between those tokens, how light moves, how objects deform, how perspective shifts, and builds an internal understanding of temporal rhythm. If the scene involves water, it learns that waves repeat in cycles. If there's a human walking, it learns that legs alternate and torsos sway. The patterns of reality become the grammar of motion. But Sora doesn't just predict frames in sequence. It also understands context, and that's where the world modeling magic happens. Every object, surface, and movement in a clip affects everything else. A gust of wind doesn't just move leaves, it changes lighting, color tone, and even how the camera might shake. Sora learns these interdependencies by analyzing billions of real-world videos during training. Over time, it builds a multidimensional sense of cause and effect, not in the human sense of understanding, but in a statistical one. It doesn't know why the wind blows, but it knows what happens when it does. This contextual understanding extends to space. Traditional video models struggled with 3D geometry, often producing warped or inconsistent camera motion. Sora gets around that by embedding spatial reasoning directly into its token structure. Each visual token contains information not just about what's visible, but where it exists in a virtual coordinate system. That allows the model to simulate camera pans, tilts, and tracking shots that look physically consistent. It's not literally constructing a 3D world like a video game engine would. It's inferring one through probability. But the effect is indistinguishable from actual depth. Another piece of the puzzle is latent space. You can think of latent space as the model's imagination, a compressed, abstract version of reality where visual patterns live as mathematical relationships. When you give Sora a prompt, it doesn't start drawing pixels directly. It first imagines the scene inside this hidden space, where dog, lake, and sunset aren't pictures, but clusters of meaning. Only once it's formed that conceptual world does it begin decoding it back into visual frames. That's why AI videos feel so cohesive, even from vague prompts. The model isn't just painting by description, it's interpreting concepts in a shared world space. Everything it generates, from the color of the sky to the motion of water, comes from relationships it has already learned inside that vast latent dimension. Now let's talk about the data that makes this possible. Training a system like Sora requires an unimaginable volume of video, likely millions of hours. These aren't just random clips either. The dataset must include every kind of scene the model might be asked to create: nature, cities, animals, vehicles, people, weather, day-night, motion, stillness. But just as important as quantity is diversity. The model has to see how the same concept behaves under different conditions. It needs to know not only what a dog running looks like, but what it looks like on grass, on snow, on sand, in slow motion, in the rain. The model learns by compressing all of these variations into a single shared knowledge base, a kind of visual intuition about the world. That's why it can handle new prompts it's never seen before. When you ask for a cat playing chess on the moon, it doesn't need that exact example in its training data. It simply combines what it knows about cats, about chess, about lunar surfaces, and about lighting and low gravity. The model's internal physics and textures are flexible enough to adapt. But there's another layer to Sora that makes it stand out: multimodality. It doesn't just process text and video in isolation, it connects them. When you type a sentence, Sora interprets your words not as instructions, but as intentions. It understands that the word melancholy implies slower pacing, cooler tones, and softer motion. The phrase "shot on a vintage camera" doesn't just change color filters. It adds frame jitter, film grain, and subtle lens artifacts. In other words, the text acts as a psychological script, guiding how the video feels, not just how it looks. That's what separates Sora from older generation tools, like simple diffusion-based generators. It's not merely reactive, it's interpretive. It doesn't output a literal translation of the prompt. It creates a cinematic interpretation of it. And it does that by connecting meaning across multiple modalities: language, vision, physics, and emotion. There's a reason researchers call this kind of system a world model. The phrase doesn't just sound cool, it's literal. A world model is any AI that builds a compact, predictive simulation of the world around it. It doesn't store video frames, it stores rules. It learns what tends to happen after what. That predictive power is what gives it realism. If you can predict what happens next, you can simulate reality. And once an AI can simulate reality, it stops being just a generator. It becomes a kind of primitive intelligence. It can reason about scenes, anticipate outcomes, and maintain internal consistency across long timescales. That's why people who study Sora often describe it not as a video tool, but as a step toward artificial general perception. Think of it this way. ChatGPT taught machines how to speak coherently. Sora is teaching them how to see coherently, the moment both skills merge. Language and vision unified in one. System. You get something profoundly new. An AI that can read, see, imagine, and generate all within the same mental model. If that sounds like science fiction, remember that 10 years ago, even a realistic AI image was considered impossible. Today, you can describe a 30-second short film, and a neural network will build it from scratch, complete with lighting, camera movement, and emotional tone. The rate of progress is exponential. Sora, in its current form, is just the prototype of that future. It's not perfect. It still makes mistakes. Sometimes objects flicker, sometimes motion looks too smooth, and sometimes physics takes a short vacation. But the trajectory is obvious. Each generation of these systems understands the world a little better. Each one refines its sense of how reality fits together. Eventually, these models won't just generate video. They'll be able to reason about it. They'll know what's happening in a scene, what's likely to happen next, and what emotional effect it might have on a viewer. That's when we'll cross the line from synthetic imagery into synthetic experience. So when people say Sora is a video generator, that's only half true. It's not really about video at all. It's about learning how the universe behaves and using that knowledge to create convincing worlds on demand. Sora doesn't just animate pixels, it breathes statistical life into them. And in doing so, it's quietly redefining what it means for a machine to understand. Sora might be the poster child of video AI, but it's far from alone. In fact, you could say it's standing on the shoulders of a small army of pioneers who've spent years trying to make pixels move with purpose. There's Runway, the scrappy New York startup that turned machine learning into a creative movement. There's Pika Labs, the speed-obsessed platform that grew from a university project into a viral sensation. There's Luma AI, working in the space between 3D reconstruction and storytelling. And then there are dozens of smaller contenders, all racing toward the same horizon, a future where anyone can create cinema with a sentence. If Sora is the quiet genius locked in a lab, Runway is the street artist who turned research into revolution. Founded by Cristobal Valenzuela, Runway's mission wasn't just to build tools for filmmakers, it was to democratize visual creativity. When they launched Runway ML back in 2018, it looked like a playground for curious tinkerers. But underneath the colorful interface, it was doing something radical, bringing the most advanced AI models out of the lab and into the hands of ordinary creators. Runway's philosophy was simple but powerful. Make AI tools intuitive, fast, and fun. That's why their products took off in the world of YouTubers, indie filmmakers, and small studios. You didn't need a PhD to use them, just an idea. Their system let users erase objects, extend scenes, generate new ones, and eventually, with Gen 1 and Gen 2, turn static images or text into full motion. What made Runway's approach unique wasn't just the technology, it was the vibe. Sora feels like a research milestone. Runway feels like art school chaos wrapped in a web app. You can feel the company's roots in design. Every model they release comes with a creative philosophy, an aesthetic focus. Gen 2, for example, wasn't trying to be physically perfect. It was trying to feel cinematic. Runway leaned into the imperfections, letting the grain and distortion become part of the style, the same way analog filmmakers embraced lens flare and noise. That decision paid off. Instead of chasing realism, Runway built a tool that people could actually use right now, not just in a lab. Music video directors, advertisers, and content creators began using it to storyboard, to create concept footage, and sometimes even to release finished work. Runway wasn't just generating video, it was generating possibility. Then there's Pika Labs, the energetic upstart founded by Stanford alumni who looked at Runway and said, cool, but what if it was faster? Pika's rise was meteoric. Within a year, they went from a niche Discord community to one of the most talked about AI startups in the world. Their secret weapon was speed. Pika's interface stripped away everything unnecessary. You typed your idea, hit enter, and within seconds, you had motion. No clunky UI, no waiting hours for render queues. It was creative adrenaline. Pika became the TikTok of video AI, lightweight, addictive, and everywhere. Its clips flooded social media, often labeled simply as "made with Pika." It didn't matter that they sometimes looked dreamlike or surreal. The point wasn't perfection, it was immediacy. You could iterate on your idea in real time. Want to change the angle? Add drone shot. Want the lighting to shift? Add sunset. Pika turned filmmaking into a conversation. Under the hood, Pika's model architecture focused heavily on frame continuity and prompt control. They found clever ways to stabilize identity across time, so your characters wouldn't melt or morph as much as in older systems. They also introduced in-painting for video, which let you edit sections of a clip directly by prompting, something that felt like Photoshop for motion. And while Sora remains locked behind research walls, Pika went open, letting the public test and break things in real time. That chaotic energy fueled its growth. Every viral clip trained more users to speak the new language of generative video. Short prompts, cinematic phrasing, and endless experimentation. But perhaps the most interesting competitor in the mix is Luma AI, a company that took a completely different route. Instead of focusing on diffusion models, Luma dove deep into 3D reconstruction, using neural networks to create realistic scenes from just a few photos or short clips. If Sora is about predicting frames, Luma is about reconstructing worlds. Its technology is more like photogrammetry on steroids. You can scan an object with your phone, upload it, and within minutes get a full textured, rotatable 3D model. The kind of asset that can be used in films, games, or VR environments. Luma's approach might sound separate from Sora or Pika, but it's part of the same evolution. These systems are converging. The line between video generation and 3D scene reconstruction is fading fast. Soon, generating a short film won't mean producing frames. It'll mean creating a simulated world where a virtual camera can move freely. Luma's NERF-based neural radiance field systems point directly toward that future. They don't just create video, they create volumetric space. And then there's another kind of competitor, the ecosystem itself. Open source projects like Stability's Stable Video Diffusion and Kling from China's Kuaishou have started to chip away at the gap between open and proprietary models. Stable Video Diffusion, for instance, is free to use and runs on consumer GPUs. While it can't compete with Sora's realism yet, it's moving fast, and it's giving indie developers a foundation to experiment with motion at the code level. Kling, on the other hand, represents the industrial side of the race. Developed by one of China's biggest short video platforms, it shows how aggressively different countries are investing in this technology. Kling's early demos were shockingly advanced, detailed, stable, and realistic enough to make people ask if it was secretly trained on Sora-level data. Whether that's true or not, it doesn't matter. The message was clear. The video, AI arms race, isn't just artistic, it's geopolitical. Whoever controls generative media at scale controls influence itself. All of this competition is pushing progress at breakneck speed. Each company is attacking the same problem: how to make synthetic video believable, but from different angles. Runway focuses on accessibility, Pika focuses on speed, Luma focuses on dimensional accuracy. OpenAI focuses on realism and control. Together, they're building the foundation of a new kind of industry: synthetic cinema. Movies made not by cameras, but by algorithms. And here's where it gets even more interesting. Each system reflects the philosophy of its creators. Sora feels methodical, scientific, like something designed for the future of research and simulation. Runway feels human, emotional, intuitive, a bridge between art and technology. Pika feels like chaos incarnate, fast, creative, unfiltered. Luma feels like engineering precision, a blueprint for how AI might merge with the film and gaming industries. It's no longer a question of who will win. Each of these systems fills a different niche, and eventually they'll all merge. You'll have platforms that can generate full scenes like Sora, edit them in real time like Pika, add 3D depth like Luma, and layer cinematic effects and storytelling tools like Runway. The end result won't be a single model, but an entire creative ecosystem, an AI studio that never sleeps. And as wild as that sounds, we're already halfway there. You can open your browser right now and type "a cat in a detective hat solving crimes in Venice." And within a minute, watch it unfold before your eyes. That's the reality we're living in. The boundary between film set and data set dissolving into pure prompt. There's a strange, beautiful, and slightly terrifying paradox at the heart of what video AI is doing to creativity. On one hand, it's opening the gates wider than ever before. Anyone, anywhere, can now describe a scene. A car chase through neon rain, a lonely astronaut watching Earth rise, a love story told from the perspective of a goldfish, and the machine will make it happen on. The other hand, by making creation effortless, it risks flattening the very struggle that made creativity feel meaningful in the first place. This is the creative paradox of the new era. When everyone becomes a director, what does direction even mean? For over a century, filmmaking has been the domain of a privileged few, those with access to cameras, crews, budgets, and the patience to wrestle with the chaos of reality. Every shot required labor, coordination, and compromise, but the imperfections were part of the art. Every film carried the fingerprints of human error, the flicker of light that wasn't planned, the actor's expression that wasn't in the script, the take that wasn't perfect but felt alive. Video AI threatens to erase all that. Sora and its peers don't care about camera budgets or weather conditions. They don't get tired, they don't need lunch breaks, and they don't forget their lines. When you tell them what to make, they just make it, cleanly, efficiently, and endlessly. The chaos that once defined art becomes optional. And yet, paradoxically, that's also what makes this moment so exciting. Because when you remove the logistical barriers, what's left is pure imagination. For the first time in history, ideas themselves become the raw material of cinema. You don't need to know how to light a set, you just need to know how to dream vividly enough for the model to understand you. That's not hyperbole, it's happening already. There are people online right now who've never held a camera, but are using Runway or Pika to produce entire short films. They write prompts like, "A noir detective walks through foggy streets while jazz plays in the distance," and then refine it line by line, shot by shot. The results aren't perfect yet, but they're getting close enough to make traditional filmmakers nervous. What's emerging isn't just a new kind of art form, it's a new kind of artist, the prompt director. These are people who think in text but see in motion. They understand how to speak the machine's language, how to coax emotion out of syntax, how to turn adjectives into atmosphere. They know that a woman in the rain feels different from a woman standing beneath a streetlight as the rain turns to mist. They're not cinematographers in the traditional sense. They're narrators of neural dreams. But there's a shadow to this. The easier it becomes to create, the harder it becomes to stand out. When everyone can make a masterpiece, the word masterpiece loses meaning. The same thing happened with photography when smartphones arrived. Suddenly, billions of people could take great photos. And yet, the explosion of access didn't kill photography. It redefined it. The value shifted from technical skill to perspective. What mattered wasn't who had the best camera, but who had something worth seeing. Video AI will force the same shift in filmmaking. The winners won't be the ones who know the tech best. They'll be the ones who know what to say with it. Storytelling will become the new currency, and authenticity, that elusive human texture, will become priceless. Because even when the pixels are fake, people can still tell when the emotion is real. There's another irony here. The first people to lose their jobs to AI video might not be the creative visionaries. It might be the technical laborers who turn those visions into reality. The grips, the editors, the animators who spent hours cleaning up green screens or adjusting lighting in post. Those repetitive, specialized tasks are exactly what AI excels at. But that doesn't mean the artists disappear. It means the nature of artistry changes. Think of it like the transition from film photography to digital. At first, photographers rebelled. They said digital lacked soul. They weren't wrong, and it did for a while. But then, once the tools matured, artists began using digital in ways film never allowed. They could experiment instantly, push boundaries, and invent new styles that relied on the technology itself. The same will happen with video AI. Once the novelty fades, true artists will start bending it, misusing it, breaking it, to create things that feel alive again. That's where the future directors will emerge, not from film schools, but from Discord servers and Reddit threads. They'll learn not from lectures, but from prompts that work and prompts that fail. Their cameras will be text boxes. Their crews will be neural networks. Their budgets will be measured not in dollars, but in tokens. And as absurd as that sounds, it's also liberating. For the first time, the barrier between idea and execution is dissolving. You no longer need permission to make something cinematic. You just need a thought, a sentence, and the courage to try. The gatekeepers are gone. And that's both thrilling and terrifying. Because once everyone has access, the floodgates truly open. The internet will drown in content. Infinite movies, infinite shorts, infinite interpretations of the same ideas. Most of it will be forgettable. But hidden in that noise will be new voices. People who would have never been heard in the old system. Teenagers in small towns. Artists without budgets. Writers without connections. For them, AI isn't a threat. It's liberation. But even liberation has consequences. When creation becomes infinite, attention becomes the new scarcity. Algorithms will decide what's seen and what isn't. The next generation of filmmakers won't just learn how to direct AI, they'll have to learn how to direct attention. In that sense, the art of storytelling won't die. It'll mutate into something sharper and faster. Already, we're seeing early signs of this cultural shift. TikTok creators using Pika or Runway are starting to merge short-form virality with cinematic ambition. A 15-second clip might now carry the production value of a short film. The line between director, influencer, and editor is blurring into one hybrid role, a digital auteur. And this is the strange beauty of it all. We're entering an era where creativity is no longer defined by access to tools, but by access to ideas. AI video levels the field so dramatically that the only thing left separating people is imagination. You can't automate that. Not yet, anyway. There's a saying among old filmmakers, the hardest part of directing is knowing what you want. That's about to become literal truth. In a world where you can make anything, the hardest part will be deciding what's worth making. The camera has become a sentence. The script has become a prompt. The edit has become a slider. We're no longer filming reality. We're authoring it. And maybe that's the point. The next generation of storytellers won't just capture the world, they'll build it. One word, one frame, one dream at a time. The first time you see a Sora video, you probably smile. It's stunning. It's new. It feels like a glimpse of the future. But the second time you see one, especially if it looks too real, that smile fades a little. You start to wonder, how do we know what's real anymore? That's the quiet, unsettling question lurking under all this progress. Because while generative video models like Sora, Runway, and Pika are incredible tools for creativity, they're also weapons of illusion. And the better they get, the harder it becomes to tell the difference between truth and fabrication. The word that hangs over all of this is deep fake. It used to describe crude face swaps, bad lip syncs, and uncanny celebrity clips that fooled no one. But today, with systems like Sora, the line between deepfake and cinematic realism has almost vanished. We're not just replacing faces anymore. We're replacing events. Imagine a video of a world leader declaring war, or a viral clip of a celebrity saying something outrageous, or a fabricated news report showing chaos in a city that's perfectly calm. If the visuals are generated by AI and done well, who can tell the difference? Not you, not me, not even the experts, unless they have access to the metadata. And that's the real danger, not just fake content, but the collapse of trust itself. When anything can be faked perfectly, people stop believing in everything. It's called the liar's dividend. The idea that bad actors don't need to fake videos to cause chaos. They just need people to know that videos can be faked. Then, when something real surfaces, they can simply deny it. That's AI, they'll say, and who can prove otherwise? This isn't hypothetical. We've already seen glimpses of it. Deepfakes have been used in elections, scams, revenge porn, and propaganda. And that's with technology that's still rough around the edges. Now imagine what happens when the same tools that make Hollywood-quality video on demand become available to everyone with a laptop. The technology itself isn't evil, but it's neutral in the most dangerous way possible. It obeys whoever types the prompt. It doesn't ask, "Should I make this?" It just says, "Okay." Consent becomes slippery. Whose likeness can be used? Whose identity can be borrowed? When does homage become impersonation? And when does impersonation become theft? There are laws being drafted around the world to try to catch up. Deepfake labeling rules, digital watermarking standards, identity rights protections, but they're crawling while the technology sprints. You can't legislate faster than the internet moves. And even if you could, enforcement is another nightmare. Once a video goes viral, it's everywhere, copied, remixed, re-uploaded across 1,000 servers in minutes. But the real challenge isn't legal. It's philosophical. We've spent centuries treating recorded images as evidence. Seeing is believing. That's how we built journalism, justice, and history. But now, sight itself can be simulated. A video can show something that never happened, and your brain will believe it anyway, because that's what brains do. They trust the eye. The implications are massive. Courts, newsrooms, and even historians will need to rethink what proof means. In the age of AI video, evidence can lie, and that changes everything. At the same time, there's a moral layer here that's even more personal. Think about how easy it's becoming to create fake people or to resurrect real ones. AI-generated actors can already mimic anyone's face, voice, and gestures. That's exciting for art, but dangerous for dignity. Who owns your digital self? Do you have the right to control how you appear in synthetic worlds? What happens when your image outlives you and keeps acting in movies you never made? These questions aren't futuristic anymore. Studios are already experimenting with digital doubles, scanned versions of actors who can be reused in future productions. Some actors are fine with it, as long as they're paid. Others see it as selling their soul, pixel by pixel. And what about ordinary people? You don't need to be famous to be faked. A single photo on social media can be enough for an AI to generate convincing video of you. We've already seen fake nudes, fake scandals, fake kidnappings, all powered by off-the-shelf tools. The victims often can't fight back because the technology is so new and the law is so old. So where does that leave us? Somewhere between awe and alarm. The same technology that lets a teenager make a short film about a dragon can also let a scammer clone a politician's voice to manipulate voters. The same algorithms that power art can power disinformation. There's no simple solution. You can't uninvent this technology, and banning it won't work. What we need is a new kind of literacy, synthetic literacy. People will have to learn to see the world differently, to question what they watch, to look for the invisible fingerprints that AI always leaves behind. That's where watermarking comes in. OpenAI, Google, and others are developing systems to embed invisible signals into generated media. Patterns of noise that mark something as synthetic. These digital signatures could help verify authenticity, assuming they can't be easily stripped out. But let's be honest, anything that can be added can be removed. Watermarks are a seatbelt, not an airbag. Ultimately, the solution might be cultural, not technical. We'll have to rebuild trust, not in media, but in people. We'll have to rely on relationships, verified sources, and reputation networks, rather than just what appears on screen. In a world of perfect illusion, the only truth that survives will be social. Who you believe, not what you see. But here's the twist. Illusion has always been part of storytelling. Every film, every photograph, every novel is a form of deception, a crafted vision of reality. The difference is that now the tools of deception are democratized. Everyone gets to play God. That can be terrifying, but it can also be empowering. If we treat AI as a mirror, it reflects our intentions. If we use it to tell stories, to imagine better worlds, to understand each other, it becomes art. If we use it to manipulate, it becomes propaganda. The machine doesn't decide. We do. So maybe the ethical future of AI video isn't about banning illusion, but about reclaiming it, learning to use fiction responsibly in a world that's drowning in fake realities. After all, truth has always needed defenders. Now it just needs directors, too. The paradox of this era is that the more convincing our fakes become, the more we'll crave something real, not just in what we see, but in what we feel. And maybe that's the one thing the machines can't generate: genuine human honesty. The kind that doesn't come from pixels or prompts, but from people willing to say, "This happened. I was there. I know." That voice, quiet, flawed, and unfiltered, might become the most valuable thing left in a world full of perfect lies. Every civilization has relied on something to remember it. Clay tablets, scrolls, paintings, photographs, film. The story of humanity is the story of how we record ourselves. But something strange is happening now. For the first time in history, our memories aren't just being recorded, they're being generated. Video AI has started to turn history into a flexible material. With the right prompt, you can recreate the moon landing in 8K color, film the Battle of Thermopylae as if it were shot by Christopher Nolan, or watch a documentary of events that never actually happened but feel like they could have. The line between memory and imagination is dissolving, and that's going to change how we think about truth, time, and legacy itself. Let's start with something simple. When you watch a historical film, you know it's a recreation. Actors, sets, effects, it's fiction built on fact. But when AI generates video, that distinction blurs. You can create footage that looks archival, film grain, lighting, camera shake, but that was never filmed at all. It's not an actor playing Napoleon anymore. It's a completely artificial Napoleon giving a speech that no one ever heard, but that sounds and looks utterly real. Now imagine generations growing up surrounded by synthetic history, AI-generated documentaries, restored footage, and reenactments that seamlessly mix the real and the fake. How do they tell the difference? More importantly, how should they? Because in one sense, this could be a gift. AI could let us see the past in ways that were impossible before. We could visualize ancient cities, witness extinct species, or relive moments that only existed in dusty text. Historians could use generative models to fill in missing fragments, reconstruct destroyed artwork, simulate lost performances, and bring context to stories that never had visuals. It's digital resurrection, powered by math and imagination, but in another sense, it's a nightmare waiting to happen. Once history becomes editable, anyone can rewrite it. A deepfake from the year 2040 might show events from 1940 that never occurred, and if it looks convincing enough, it could reshape how people remember the past. Propaganda doesn't need to shout anymore. It just needs to look authentic. The scariest part is that AI doesn't just fake images, it fakes continuity. It can generate convincing cause and effect. A single prompt can create an entire fake sequence that feels historically plausible. It's not just lying with a photo, it's lying with narrative logic. Let's say a regime wants to justify a new policy. They don't need to distort existing footage anymore. They can generate new archival video that shows their version of history. A war that didn't start the way textbooks say it did. A protest that supposedly turned violent, a speech that was never given. People share it. Algorithms amplify it. Within hours, fiction becomes accepted memory. In the past, history was written by the victors. In the future, it'll be rendered by whoever has the best GPUs. But let's step back from the dystopia for a second, because this isn't all bad news. There's another possible outcome, and it's actually kind of poetic. AI could help preserve memory in ways that were never possible before. Instead of a photo album, imagine a fully interactive visual record of your life. Moments regenerated from your text messages, your old videos, your social media posts. You could literally walk through your past. People might one day talk to AI reconstructions of their grandparents, not through grainy videos, but through hyper-realistic avatars that can speak, move, and remember shared stories. It's not real in the biological sense, but it's emotionally real. It's synthetic continuity, artificial memory designed to fill in emotional gaps that time leaves behind. Of course, that opens a different can of philosophical worms. If we can relive any moment endlessly, or even re-edit it, does memory lose its meaning? Part of what gives life its shape is the fact that it fades. Memories decay, details warp, emotions soften. That's how humans process loss. But AI memory doesn't fade. It can be looped, replayed, remade in higher resolution every year. We could literally remaster our nostalgia. That power could be healing, seeing, or deeply dangerous. Imagine reliving a loved one's smile whenever you want. Then imagine being unable to stop. It's easy to see how synthetic memory could become emotional quicksand, a loop of perfect moments that keeps us from moving forward. It's also worth asking, when AI starts generating memory-like media, who owns those memories? If you feed an AI your personal footage and it generates new moments, say, me and my dad fishing again, but this time it's sunset, is that still your memory? Or is it a synthetic derivative that belongs to the algorithm? The legal system doesn't have language for that yet, but it will have to. Historians, archivists, and museums are already starting to grapple with this. How do you authenticate an image in a world where anything can be fabricated? One idea is to build cryptographic provenance systems, digital chains of custody that verify the origin of every frame. Another idea is to preserve metadata as carefully as we preserve the media itself: timestamps, geotags, lens data, sensor fingerprints. But these systems will only work if people actually use them, and history shows that convenience usually wins over caution. It's easy to imagine a future where the most viewed historical videos are all AI reconstructions, not real footage. They'll be popular because they're immersive and emotionally satisfying, the movie version of history. And just like today's films shape how we picture ancient Rome or the Middle Ages, tomorrow's generated media might define how we imagine the 20th and 21st centuries. We'll think we're remembering, but really, we'll be consuming memory, pre-edited for emotional resonance. It's not that history will disappear, it'll become editable fiction with a moral opinion baked in. And yet, here's the twist. Maybe that's always been true. Every historical record, every textbook, documentary, or museum display is a narrative built from fragments. The difference is that now the fragments themselves can be synthetic. AI doesn't destroy memory, it accelerates its evolution. It turns memory into a living organism, fluid, responsive, mutable. If we use that power carefully, it could become one of the greatest storytelling tools humanity has ever known. It could help us empathize with the past instead of just studying it. You could stand in the middle of ancient Athens, not just read about it. You could witness history from the perspectives that were never documented: the overlooked, the silenced, the forgotten. Used well, AI could give history its missing voices. Used poorly, it could erase them completely. The next great challenge won't be teaching machines to remember, it'll be teaching us how to remember in the age of machines. How to draw a line between memory and myth, between nostalgia and narrative, between what happened and what feels like it did. Because when AI becomes the historian, we risk trading truth for clarity, and that's a dangerous bargain. The past might finally become as editable as video. But the question is, who gets to hit render? If you want to understand why video AI is evolving so fast, don't look at the technology. Look at the economy it's feeding. At the center of all this is a resource more valuable than gold, oil, or data: human attention. Every social network, streaming platform, and content creator is locked in a global arms race to capture it, hold it, and convert it into revenue. AI video isn't just another player in that race. It's about to rewrite the rules of the game. Let's start with a brutal truth. The internet runs on addiction. Every feed, every algorithm, every notification is designed to keep your eyes on the screen for just a little longer. Platforms like TikTok, YouTube, and Instagram aren't competing to be the best. They're competing to be the most irresistible. The problem is, human creators can only produce so much content. There are only 24 hours in a day, and creativity takes time. That's where generative video steps in. Infinite content, zero fatigue. AI video models are the perfect weapon in the attention economy. They can churn out an endless stream of clips, each tailored to what keeps you hooked. The algorithm doesn't have to wait for creators to upload anymore. It can generate what you'll like next. If the current video is about a cat playing piano, the next might be a dog remixing the same tune in a different style, all generated in real time, never filmed, never performed, but perfectly engineered to keep you scrolling. We're moving from an era of recommendation to an era of generation. And that's a profound shift. Recommendation algorithms used to show you existing videos that matched your interests. Generative algorithms will create new ones on demand, personalized for you. It's like Netflix, but instead of offering you a list, it invents the show you didn't know you wanted instantly. That sounds incredible, until you realize what it means. The walls between entertainment, advertising, and manipulation will get very thin. A brand won't need to pay for an ad. It can generate millions of micro ads, each one tuned to your mood, your history, your demographic, your emotional triggers. If you lingered too long on a travel video, you'll suddenly see a realistic AI-generated clip of someone just like you walking through the streets of Paris or eating pasta in Florence, not because it exists, but because the model knows it will make you click book now. Attention becomes programmable, and that makes it the ultimate commodity. Now imagine this power in the hands of every creator, company, and political group. Infinite on-demand content generation means infinite competition for your time. Feeds will no longer be filled with human creativity, but with synthetic persuasion. Videos so emotionally tuned, they'll bypass your rational brain entirely. Not lies necessarily, just stories optimized for your nervous system. This is where the phrase, the attention arms race, stops being a metaphor. It becomes literal. Whoever controls generative media controls the emotional climate of civilization. The same machine that can make a Pixar-quality short film in 5 minutes can also flood the internet with subtle propaganda, viral distractions, or fake grassroots movements. Of course, this kind of thing isn't new. We've been manipulated by media for as long as media has existed. But scale is what changes everything. Generative video turns manipulation from an art form into an algorithmic process. You don't need teams of copywriters, actors, or editors. You just need compute power and a good data set. Even the platforms themselves are terrified. TikTok, YouTube, and Meta are all experimenting with AI content and quietly panicking about what happens when users can no longer tell which videos were made by people and which were made by machines. Some insiders have already warned that the next phase of social media could become a feedback loop of AI. Watching AI, bots generating content for bots to recommend to other In that world, human attention becomes the rarest resource of all. And here's the twist. The market might not even need us to watch anymore. Once attention is automated, metrics will shift. Engagement can be simulated. AI accounts can generate views, comments, and entire fake communities that look real but aren't. The illusion of popularity will become a product itself. If you think fake followers were a problem, wait until you meet fake fandoms. Meanwhile, human creators, the ones still making art, music, and films by hand, will find themselves competing against machines that never sleep and never run out of ideas. The value of content will collapse. The internet will drown in videos, supply will go infinite, but demand, your limited human attention span, that stays the same. That's basic economics. When something becomes infinite, it becomes worthless. So the next logical question is, what's left to monetize? The answer might be authenticity. When everything is synthetic, the rarest thing will be something real. Verified human creators, real behind-the-scenes footage, proof of experience. Those might become the new gold standard. Platforms may start labeling human-made content as a premium experience, the way people pay more for organic food. There's already a cultural hunger for that. You can see it in the way audiences crave rawness. Unfiltered podcasts, handheld vlogs, unscripted moments. As AI floods the world with perfect illusions, imperfection might become luxury. At the same time, not everyone will want authenticity. Many will choose fantasy because fantasy is more comfortable, more beautiful, more adjustable. That's the divide we're heading toward. Not between real and fake, but between those who crave truth and those who crave stimulation. On the business side, the real winners will be the platforms that can manage the chaos. OpenAI, Google, and Meta are building not just models, but ecosystems, tools for generation, moderation, and monetization all in one loop. Whoever creates the smoothest, safest pipeline from text prompt to viral clip will own the future of digital attention. It's easy to imagine a decade from now where entire entertainment industries operate on subscription-based AI pipelines. Want a short film every night before bed? The AI makes one. Want a motivational video in your own voice? Done. Want to watch a rom-com starring you and your favorite celebrity? That'll be an extra fee. Content will no longer be produced. It will be streamed directly from Possibility. And if that sounds overwhelming, it should, because it means the bottleneck in creativity won't be production anymore. It'll be meaning. There will be too much of everything. The next big problem to solve won't be how to make videos, but how to make them matter. If there's a silver lining, it's that human attention. The real kind, the focused, emotional, engaged kind, can't be faked. You can trick someone into watching, but you can't trick them into caring. And caring is where true value lives. That's what the machines still don't understand. So yes, the attention economy is mutating into something alien, automated, and unstoppable. But that doesn't mean humans are obsolete. It just means the next great artists won't be the ones who make the most videos. They'll be the ones who make the fewest, but make them unforgettable. In the flood of infinite pixels, meaning becomes the last scarce resource. And that might be the one thing that still belongs to us. There's a moment in every technological revolution when the artists realize the tools aren't just faster, they're fundamentally different. When photography arrived, painters panicked, thinking their craft was dead. Then they invented Impressionism. When CGI exploded, old-school directors grumbled about pixels replacing passion, until The Matrix and Avatar proved that new tools could tell old truths in fresh ways. Now, with video AI, we're entering that same kind of shockwave. The difference is that this time, the tool isn't just helping to make films, it's becoming a co-author. The director of the future isn't going to yell action. They'll whisper a prompt. Let's start with the most obvious shift, the death of traditional pre-production. In the old days, you needed storyboards, concept artists, casting calls, set builders, camera crews, and months of coordination just to get one shot right. Now, you can describe your vision. A car chase through a futuristic Tokyo at sunrise, filmed in the style of Roger Deakins with lens flares and mist, and I will generate a fully rendered cinematic sequence in minutes. It won't be perfect yet. It might get the shadows wrong, or the smoke physics might feel off. But give it a few years. Once generative video models learn real-world physics and cinematic grammar, how light, lens, and emotion interact, we'll have something that's not just visually impressive, but cinematically literate. Filmmaking will stop being about what you can shoot and start being about what you can imagine. That changes everything. Directors will become designers of reality. They'll craft worlds, characters, and emotions with words and references, rather than lenses and cameras. The creative bottleneck will shift from logistics to language, how well you can describe the scene in your head. Writers, not camera operators, might become the most valuable people on set, or whatever replaces a set the boundary between script and screen will collapse. You'll write, "She steps into the glowing ruins of Venice as the water shimmers with memory," and the AI will literally generate it. You'll edit it like you edit text. Think about what that means. You won't need Hollywood anymore. A single creator with a laptop and vision could rival entire studios. The barriers to entry, budget, location, casting, vanish. Anyone could make a film. But here's the paradox. When anyone can make a film, how do you stand out? That question might define the next generation of storytelling. In an infinite cinema, taste becomes more important than talent. Curators, editors, and prompt writers will shape culture the way directors used to. The artistry won't be in operating cameras, but in steering algorithms, guiding them towards style, subtlety, humanity. Now let's talk about actors, because this is where things get ethically messy. AI doesn't just generate environments, it generates people. You'll be able to cast anyone living or dead. Want 1960s Audrey Hepburn to star in your new indie romance? Done. Want a de-aged Denzel Washington and a fictional co-star who looks like the love child of Zendaya and a Pixar character? Easy. The actor's face and voice become parameters. That sounds thrilling, until you remember those actors might not be involved at all. Their digital doubles can be licensed, cloned, or, in the shadier corners of the industry, pirated. Hollywood unions are already sounding the alarm. What happens when a studio doesn't need to hire actors, pay salaries, or shoot scenes? They just pay once for an AI likeness and generate an infinite number of performances. It's not science fiction anymore. It's the contract dispute of the decade. But the problem goes deeper than economics. Acting isn't just appearance. It's presence. It's soul. The subtle tension in a jawline, the flicker in the eyes when a character lies to themselves. Those moments define human performance. AI can imitate them, but it doesn't mean them. That gap between imitation and intention might be the last sacred space in cinema. Still, even that might blur. Imagine a future where actors collaborate with their own digital replicas. They perform once, feed their emotional data into a model, and then refine performances virtually. It's not acting in the old sense, it's emotional design. The actor becomes both performer and programmer. Cinematographers will face a similar transformation. Instead of choosing lenses and lights, they'll design aesthetic profiles. They'll input emotional goals, make this scene feel nostalgic but uneasy. And the AI will adjust color grading, camera movement, and even composition to match. Editing won't be about cutting footage, it'll be about sculpting time. Sound engineers, they'll train models on frequencies of mood. Costume designers, they'll generate outfits that evolve dynamically with the story's emotion. Film scores might sync automatically with visual rhythm, generated note by note from the audience's physiological response. It sounds almost magical or terrifying, depending on your relationship with control. Because here's the thing, when the creative process becomes conversational, power shifts. It's no longer about commanding armies of crew members. It's about persuading algorithms to understand your intent. That's not directing. That's translation. You're translating human emotion into machine-readable form. The future of art might depend on who learns that new language first. Some creators will thrive in this world. They'll blend poetry and precision to coax beautiful results from the models. Others will struggle because AI doesn't reward indecision. It amplifies it. If you don't know what you want, the machine will drown you in possibilities. That's why, paradoxically, true vision will matter more than ever. Anyone can generate images, but only a few can generate meaning. The best filmmakers of the future won't be the ones with the biggest data sets or fanciest hardware. They'll be the ones who use AI to explore human truth. They'll use the tool to go deeper, not just faster, to ask questions we didn't know how to film before. Like, what does memory look like when it's simulated? What happens when a dream can be recorded? What if the camera itself has an opinion? AI filmmaking could make cinema more personal than ever. Imagine stories filmed entirely from your own memories, not metaphorically, but literally, reconstructed from your brain data and emotional responses. It's art as self-reflection, turned into light and sound. And yet, even as this becomes possible, some filmmakers will rebel. There will be a movement, maybe already starting, to shoot things the old way. Real cameras, real people, real imperfections. The same way vinyl came back after streaming, analog filmmaking will become an act of defiance. Because while AI can generate anything, it can't replicate the friction of reality, the happy accidents, the chaos of weather, the humanity that leaks through a lens. That will be the counterculture, cinema that bleeds, sweats, and stumbles. So no, I won't kill filmmaking. It'll explode it into 1,000 forms. There will be films made by humans, films made by AIs, and films made by collaborations between the two. Weird hybrids where authorship becomes a conversation. But make no mistake, the director's chair won't disappear. It'll evolve. Instead of shouting, "Cut," the directors of tomorrow will be whispering to the machine, "Do you feel it now?" Because the future of cinema isn't about perfect images. It's about building new realities and making sure they still have a pulse. In the end, all of this, every line of code, every prompt, every generated frame, comes down to one question that's both ancient and brand new. What happens when our tools start to imagine with us? Video AI isn't just another chapter in the story of technology. It's the moment the camera stops recording reality and starts dreaming it. The same lens that once captured truth now fabricates it, and that's both terrifying and thrilling. We're standing at the intersection of art, memory, economics, and identity, and the signs are all pointing in every direction at once. What's unfolding isn't just the evolution of media, it's the evolution of storytelling itself. The storyteller has always been human. The artist paints, the director frames, the writer describes. But now the tools talk back. They interpret, remix, and imagine. They're not passive instruments. They're collaborators with opinions, and that changes everything. For creators, this is both liberation and chaos. The barriers are gone. No budgets, no gates, no geography. You can build a universe with a sentence, but so can everyone else. Meaning becomes the scarce resource in a world of infinite output. The challenge isn't how to make something beautiful anymore, it's how to make something matter. For audiences, the challenge is trust. When the screen can show you anything, how do you know what's real? Maybe you stop asking. Maybe real stops being the point. Maybe you just start caring about what feels true. And that's where both art and manipulation thrive. For society, this is a mirror. Generative video exposes what we crave most: attention, emotion, control, belonging. Every frame that hooks us teaches the machine what we are, and in return, the machine teaches us what we want. It's a feedback loop that could either make us more empathetic or more programmable. For artists, the next frontier won't be about mastering software, it'll be about mastering restraint. Knowing when to use the infinite and when to stay human, when to let the model paint the sky, and when to let a camera catch the rain. The best filmmakers, writers, and creators won't be the ones who generate the most, but the ones who choose the right moments to stay imperfect. Because perfection, that clean, flawless precision of AI imagery, is where meaning dies. Life is blurry. Art breathes in the mistakes. And as much as we try to automate storytelling, the stories that stay with us are the ones that remind us we're still alive. So yes, AI will become the director, the camera, the actor, the editor, and the studio. But it can't become the audience. It can't sit in the dark, heart pounding, eyes wide, waiting to see what happens next. That part still belongs to us. And maybe that's the future's quiet mercy. No matter how advanced the machine becomes, it still can't feel wonder. It can simulate it, but it can't live it. So as we step into this new cinematic century, a world of infinite video, synthetic memory, and self-aware cameras, the real question isn't whether AI will replace us. It's whether we'll remember what it means to be worth replacing. Because the camera has started dreaming, but it's still looking at us for a reason.